Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to News Now, part of Fox10Phoenix.com. We are keeping tabs on a police situation in Los Angeles, California, being told that it is a burglary suspect that they are looking for. The person driving this vehicle did travel at a high rate of speed before driving over a curb. So again, keeping a very close eye. We actually have two pictures. I'm trying to pull up both for you, but we do not have any chopper audio. So here we go. KTTV providing one of these live feeds. KABC providing the other. So we'll continue to monitor this situation. You're watching News Now, part of Fox10Phoenix.com.
Area like this with a lot of people, a lot of activity, they can blend in very easily, and they chose to do just that. How close that lead unit was on that sedan, that's unknown at this time on that BMW, but this is a situation that is definitely dangerous, especially if you're not clear exactly with who you're dealing with, what the suspects are all about. Copy. I'm sure they picked it up on the freeway, but it started in the valley with. And LAPD may have bailed too. I mean, if they don't have an ID on these guys, good luck, right? Are they leaving? That's that off ramp, that split off ramp down there. I know it. You can get to this mall easily off the 405. Okay, are we the only ones here now? That's LAPD right there. Or maybe it's Culver City. Is that Culver City?
All right, everybody, welcome to News Now. If you're just joining us, going to give you the latest here. It looks like police in Culver City are pursuing a burglary suspect. LAPD headquarters tweeting units are in pursuit of a vehicle who was southbound, or that was southbound, 405 freeway from the 101. Please use caution in the area. Saying then again that units are still in pursuit of the vehicle that was heading southbound on 405 passing Sunset. And then they are currently in tracking mode as units continue the pursuit of the vehicle on the 405 southbound passing Washington Boulevard. And then the latest tweet: Los Angeles Police Department pursuit has entered the underground parking structure of the Fox Hills Mall in Culver City. Please avoid the area as the incident is still fluid. KTTV, their chopper right over the mall there. KTTV is Fox 11 Los Angeles. You're watching News Now, part of Fox10Phoenix.com.
Oh, we're the only ones here. There's nothing, I mean, I don't know what to show. Oh. Yeah, we don't have anything to show, so we'll show the weather. Thank you. That's Sepulveda. There's more up there. Is that at the car? I mean, can't. Hey, anybody at the desk or the booth? Do you guys? Is this the car? Okay. All right. Because there's a slew of officers trying to pull this guy over. Okay. Got it. Isn't that a sunroof? No? All right. Well, it meets the, I mean, there's 10 officers tracking this guy. Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. I'm surprised they don't even know that. I mean, I'm surprised with the airship they can't say no, that was in the car. Now, when you guys say a sun, yeah, go ahead. So we're not going to do a 7-day and tell the viewers like what the weather's going to be like for the weekend. We can't do both? Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, I really have nothing here except they're still looking. I'd like to give the viewers. No, I know. Seven-day. All right. Hey, go ahead. Go ahead, Pete. Running towards the target. Okay, everybody, they're going to come to me right now, so we'll look at target. Stand by. I got to listen to the toss. And hey, if you guys on the stream could cut my audio, because I'm having to try to communicate with you guys, and it just doesn't bode well. There's the target. And it looks like CHP's joined in, or they did join in when it was on the highways, the 101 or the 405 from the Valley. This started in the Valley. The Topanga station from the LAPD picked up at least one burglary suspect, possibly two, in a white BMW with a sunroof just before noon. They lit that car up. The car failed to yield, and the pursuit was on down the 101, southbound on the 405 freeway, traveling at very high speeds through heavy traffic, through the Sepulveda Pass, down towards the west side, the 10 freeway. You know that stretch of the 405, busy any time of the day and week. The pursuit exited in the Fox Hills area, right here at the Fox Hills Mall. And down below, they were able to evade police and pull into a structure, a covered parking structure. And we're seeing officers from the Los Angeles Police Department, CHP, and even some Culver City officers essentially look around this entire area. We've heard that a car similar to the one being pursued has been spotted, perhaps around the target here at the mall. We've seen them following similar cars, BMWs, sedans, but still one, possibly two burglary suspects still at large here in the Fox Hills area around the mall. A very busy mall, and you can see officers going in every which way, essentially around this mall. An LAPD helicopter circling overhead. There it is, looking for these suspects that are wanted for a burglary. All right, quickly, I want to show you the 7-day forecast because it is the weekend. We're going to continue to track this afternoon. It's beautiful. Get out, soak up the sun. We've earned it. A cool day, mid to high 60s. This weekend, a weak weather system could bring us an isolated or widely scattered light shower Saturday night into Sunday morning, mainly to the east and the IE south to Orange County or over the mountains. A better chance there. We could even get a dusting of snow. Now, next week, though, look what's coming our way. High pressure rebuilds, offshore flow, Santa Ana winds, true spring weather with lots of lemons on the board there and temperatures in the 70s. A quick shot outside again here. As you can see, officers surrounding this area, this very busy mall, the Westfield and the Fox Hills area, looking for at least one, possibly two burglary suspects. And we'll continue to track this from up here in Skyfox. Reporting live, I'm Rick Dickert, back in the studio. All right. All right. You know, for all the hours that we flew this week, you know, in early and Hey, Pete, do you hear me up here? LAX pups return, rough days. What's that? What are they doing? Yeah. Oh. I know I mean, 5 owned the pursuit and they left. I mean, I don't know. Well, at 1 o'clock, I'm going to say, hey, we got to. Yeah, right. I wonder if that'll happen one day. What's that? And they're doing it more and more. I mean, that's like the call. Well, they have microvans there. That's why their helicopters are able to leave. Skybox News Desk. Are we going to be clear to leave at 1? I mean, they don't even have like a pure ID on the car, right? And knowing that they were like following those cars that weren't even, that was odd. This guy's got away. They're 18% get away. Oh, there's 4. Skybox News Desk, do you have an answer? Oh, gosh, I have to go to the restroom so bad. Our station is like right up the freeway. I mean, 5 like had the pursuit known it and they bailed.
All right, everybody, we're going to be switching gears here, leaving Culver City, California, taking you to an event that Vice President Mike Pence is expected to be speaking at any moment now. It's called America First.
After this, we have a very special guest. Vice President Mike Pence will be here to talk directly to you. Now, he's coming out here because we wanted to make sure that you guys heard the message as it is actually helping the American people, because you won't hear it on, I don't know, CNN. So he's making the trip down here to Atlanta to make sure that you guys hear it right from his mouth. So let's bring up some of our panel here. It's my pleasure to introduce our moderator. We coming up here? Curtis Ellis. Curtis taught me everything I know. Checks in the mail. Next, we have U.S. Representative Karen Handel from Georgia 6. Come on! Aaron.
Yeah. Keep coming.
We have U.S. Representative Bob Woodall from Georgia 7.
Go, Bob.
Have me down there.
They told me.
We're just changing the order.
Do what he told you. Do what he told you. Forget about it. Keep standing.
U.S. Representative Barry Loudermilk from Georgia 11.
All right, Barry.
You know, I think you're right.
Yeah, I think we're supposed to swap.
Okay.
Now, a special thank you behind the scenes from Representative Woodall. He said that he's normally last because his name starts with a W. So he's very happy I put him in the middle today.
Thank you for that.
We thank you very much for all joining us, and I'll turn it over to Curtis now to take it from here.
Yay. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Can we
Let's
sit?
have a seat and get started. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you all for joining us. We are going to learn about the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, stuff you're never going to hear on the media because they're fake. No. They don't like to talk about some things, but we know that this Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017, it was the most significant tax reform in a generation. It's been impacting every American, every business, people around the world. I mean, we've been doing these events around the country, and I've heard from people like the economic development person from Iowa had just returned from Germany, where there was people from around the world meet to talk about where they're going to invest. And they are now talking about investing in America like never before. But you don't want to hear me talk about it. I'm sure you know more because you're the folks who made it all happen, and I want to thank you for that. So let's get right to the point here. Why was it so important? Why did we need this? Why was it so important to reform the tax code and to build this tax code? What was the law before, and why did we need this change? Now, feel free to jump in and go ahead.
Well, I'm going to answer that question, but can I say something real quick to the servicemen that we see here? As an former Air Force guy, I'm glad to see our Air Force friends as well as the Navy and the servicemen here. Thank you for your service because you're really what keeps us free. I appreciate you letting me do that because we don't thank them enough.
No, we
and
don't.
As a veteran myself, I know that what they face every day, and we don't pay them enough. So just to say thank you for what you do is important. You know, the tax reform was important because we were stagnant as a nation. We were stagnant in our economy. If you remember back during the Obama administration, we were told 1 to 2% of economic growth is the new norm. Well, he was right under this huge regulatory regime that they had that basically taxed the livelihood out of American, those that build America and make America strong economically. And so naturally, if you're going to tax the wealth of the people who create jobs, who create wealth in this nation, and you overregulate them where they cannot serve their customers, you're going to see a downward trend. And even as Americans are innovative, you know, you throw obstacles in the way, we figure out a way to get around them. But there were so many obstacles, not just the previous administration, but the big government ideas that we took on a couple of decades ago, almost made it to where the American dream was a distant. It was something you read in the history books. I actually talked to people in college who said, we don't believe that our lives are going to be better than yours were. And so the importance was to take the tax code that was so convoluted, it took an army of tax accountants and lawyers just to make sure you filled out your tax forms properly if you were a business and, you know, of course, as an individual as well. We needed to simplify it. But more importantly, we needed Americans to keep more of their own money so they could invest it in the things that are important to their family, not just so bureaucrats in Washington would spend it on their pet we were basically, we were not competitive. America was
less competitive.
And we've seen that, Curtis, over time, thinking about folks who go around the globe to make sure we're safe enough to be competitive. Largest pay raise in a decade that these folks called me up and said, please vote yes yesterday for. So please know how much folks are feeling that day in and day out. We did this exercise in 1986, and we didn't do it in a partisan way. It was Ronald Reagan in the White House. It was Tip O'Neill leading the U.S. House, and America had fallen to absolute worst in the world in terms of competitive tax codes. There are probably a few people in this room who have been working on this issue for a long time. Are there anybody out here who has tried to move America to number one in competitiveness with the fair tax out here over time?
All right.
Folks have recognized it, Curtis, for a long time that we were slipping away. It's not that our code was getting worse, though it was. It's that the rest of the world saw what Ronald Reagan did. They began to emulate it, and they began to do better. Well, fast forward 40 years, the world didn't just catch up with us, they lapped us, and we'd slipped back into worst in the world. Let's argue about whether or not we ought to, how much we ought to spend on education or not. Let's argue about how much we ought to spend on the environment or not. Let's argue about how much we ought to spend on parks and courts and right on down the line, but no one is advantaged by burdening American manufacturing with the absolute worst tax code on the planet. President Trump recognized that. Folks in this crowd have been advocating for that, and we finally were able to muster up enough support on both sides of the Hill to get that done. And if I can just point of personal privilege, it started on the House side. You all remember folks saying it can't be done. The Senate can never do it. We can't get it done. This is a bridge too far. And we passed it in our budget on the House side, which got rid of that 60-vote rule in the Senate, brought in the 51-vote rule. I remember I was doing a Rotary Club in Forsyth County when I laid out the calendar. You all remember that calendar. You would have put it up at some town hall meetings of the 3-month path between starting and finishing fundamental tax reform, and the Forsythians laughed at me. They laughed at me because when was the last time Congress did anything amazing in 3 months or less? And that's fair criticism. But folks had rolled up their sleeves. We've talked about it in the fair tax context all the time, Curtis. You can't do tax reform without presidential leadership. And for the first time in a long time, in our number 1 and number 2 spots in elected government, we've got fabulous leadership on tax reform, and it made a difference this year.
Well, thank you. Wonderful.
That's right.
Now, I remember they said it couldn't be done. It would never happen.
Look, being in Congress for just a short 6 months and having the opportunity to vote on the most sweeping tax cut bill in generations was an extraordinary honor. And what it did was to reset that tax code, to stop picking so many winners and losers, to making sure that we had some equity for individuals, equity in the tax code and pulling down those tax rates. We took a giant step forward for small businesses, for the pass-throughs, to try to move them to parity with the large corporations as we brought down that excessive corporate rate that was killing the ability for large companies to invest and innovate. And we're already seeing extraordinary response and reaction and growth out of this tax bill. And it was thanks to the president's leadership, the vice president, but importantly, in the House of Representatives, where it started with the House Ways and Means Committee through Chairman Brady. They worked day in and day out, and to their credit, they worked with every single member, rank and file member, in the U.S. House of Representatives, working with us to hear our concerns. Some of you in this room expressed concerns about different aspects of the bill. They worked so hard to get this tax cut bill to a place where it could provide benefit to more than 90% of individuals, working Americans in this country, and 90% of companies. And if we can get 90%, something that is 90% positive, that is an incredible win for America, folks, really incredible. So thank you for being so supportive of us as we work through that process.
The Congress hadn't done tax reform since 1986. But you got elected last year, and then they did it. You made the difference. Let's talk about some of the effects. We've seen nationwide. We hear every day another company giving a bonus or a pay raise. What's happening here in Atlanta, in Georgia, right in this area, Congresswoman?
We are seeing incredible impact and positive results from this tax cut bill. From the lower rates for companies have enabled companies to give pay raises, bonuses. One company in the 6th District has put on-site health care in place for their 300 employees. Another company, I think they're here today, Halyard, which is a medical device company located in Alpharetta. They are going to double the percent of investment that they put in R&D. They are pulling back, there he is, pulling back into the United States tens of millions of dollars for investments. Juno Construction, the largest...
Don't run past that one so fast. They're bringing money back to invest here rather...
They are. 40 million, do I have the number right? 40 million. Hey. CEO of Halyard right there. And let me tell you what the increased R&D is going to do from just one company. If you think it's just about the company and their ability to grow their company and grow their corporate footprint. Halyard is a medical device company that is on the leading edge of alternative pain management. They are a center of excellence, and that increase in R&D is going to let them do even more to help us have alternative approaches to pain management, to help us start to curb this incredible epidemic that we are seeing from opioids. That is the benefit of this tax cut bill, y'all. And it's also on the personal level, though. Let me tell you about Kim. My friend's daughter, single mom, when she did her check your check, $260 more a month in her paycheck. Another family called our office. Both the mom and dad work, 2 children, $400+ per month. You know what that means for them? The ability to fix up some things around the house and put some money into a 529 for college for their kids. This is real. This is real, folks.
You know, Curtis, I don't think there was ever any dispute that the tax cut bill was going to make a difference. The question was, who was it going to make a difference for? And you remember reading the same articles I was reading, watching the same programs I was watching throughout the fall where the House was trying to get this done. Folks said, this is just going to be for the rich, this is just going to be for the rich, and just going to be for the rich. It did not matter how often the president or Paul Ryan or a member from the House went out there and said, this is not about anybody but working families in this country. Folks didn't believe it, and it polled incredibly poorly. Fast forward to when folks started seeing the impact in their paychecks, folks finally understood, yes, there's a benefit, but the benefit was for all of us as a community. Take a look at Home Depot, based here in Atlanta. When they went out and started giving out $1,000 bonuses, they weren't giving that $1,000 bonus in the C-suite. They were giving that $1,000 bonus to hourly employees in that store. Now, if you're working $12, $15 an hour as an associate in a Home Depot store, $1,000 is real money for you and your family. UPS, based here in Atlanta, they went and they took that money and they put it into their pension fund. Now, you know, you've been reading about pension funds being underfunded across this country. Those aren't pension funds for the CEOs. That's pension funds for absolutely everybody across the board. Plowed that back into the company. And even beyond our borders, went out and put in new orders for 767s. Well, if you live in Washington State or you work in South Carolina and suddenly Boeing has more work on its line because UPS has more money to spend in the great state of Georgia, you start to see how that rising tide begins to spread. It has been so rewarding, having been beaten down about tax cuts for the rich, to have those single moms, to have those folks starting a family, walking into the office and saying, Rob, I see now it was about me, and it always was.
Yep. What have you been hearing, Congressman?
Well, Rob mentioned Home Depot, and of course we've all heard of the big bonuses that many of the companies have been given. I think they're more than crumbs. I mean, $1,000 to my family is a lot of money. But even if you
more crumbs, please, more crumbs.
Yeah, if you take enough crumbs and put it together, you make enough dough. You know, so it's. But let's also look at. There's another party, and I won't mention their name, but they're led by a liberal from San Francisco, who has already said that. They're going to win back the House in 2018 by promising to repeal the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. Now, they laid out their plan, and part of their plan was, we're going to raise the business tax, we're going to raise the corporate tax, but we're going to keep that middle income tax bracket the same. We're not going to raise it as much because that's who's important. But what they're missing is, it wasn't the individual tax break, which we gave very generously. It wasn't the individual tax break that caused the bonuses. It was the corporate tax break. It was the business tax break that really stimulated the economy, gave it a jump start. Now, Home Depot not only has given the bonuses, but they're also investing back in their employees with new training programs and to go out and to actually train in some of the critical fields we need. Because what we've seen is, as it was almost like a rocket sitting on the launch pad with the engines at full thrust, just waiting for the bolts to break loose to let it go. And you saw consumer confidence rise. You saw businesses just leap out and start bringing on new business and expanding. Well, what that's created are more jobs. Now, if you look at it, it's ironic that the unfilled jobs that we have in this nation right now are about the same as unemployed.
Right.
So we can actually get, theoretically, to full unemployment at this point. So these businesses are going beyond just giving a one-time bonus. They're investing in their people to go out and get more jobs. But to me, the most telling are the stories I'm getting from smaller businesses. Turn the clock back about a year ago. I went in Cartersville, Georgia, I went to a breakfast one morning, and a gentleman who has owned a business, it's been in his family for at least his entire life, and I think he brought it from his father. He had told me, he said, I'm looking at shutting down my business. It's too difficult to do business anymore. It's too difficult to make a profit. And because of that, my children are not even interested in taking over the family business. He said, I've done as much as I can. And I mean, he was serious. He said, I think by the end of the next year, the next 2 years, I'm just going to shut down the business and retire. It's just too difficult to operate a business because of the taxes and the regulation. I saw him 2 weeks ago. He came up to me with a big smile on his face. He said, let me tell you what happened, Barry. He said, my tax accountant called me the other day and he said, I just ran your numbers on the new tax law. You're going to save $100,000 this year or next year in your business. He turned around and he said, I'm keeping the business open, I'm expanding, and I'm hiring more people, and now my kids are interested in taking over the business. So this is the type of story that really makes a difference to people, not just, is my business going to be more profitable, but can I, again, achieve that dream of independence and entrepreneurship in America? And I think we've just loosened the bolts of that rocket where people can dream big once again.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a great story. Thank you. That's very heartening, you know. My parents had a small business for a while, didn't succeed, but and that's really a dream for a lot of people, and that's what made this country great. You know, you kind of hit on something there, talking about it stimulated the economy. It's kind of like there's two visions of how to stimulate the economy. Is it going to be through government spending and have the government decide, well, we're going to dig a ditch over there and we're going to fill one in over there and pay people to do both? Or do you let businesses make the investment decisions? And this tax cut and this program here, this administration, this policy kind of falls in the latter category, and we're seeing some real stimulus. One of the interesting aspects of the tax cut is that was specifically designed to boost the economy and to get things going is this depreciation, which sounds technical, so please don't let your eyes glaze over too much here. But you can write off your investment, basically. Any one of you want to talk about that?
I'm just curious, how many folks have had to struggle with a depreciation schedule in the course of their life and small business?
I see two. I see a bunch over there.
It's on and on and on, and it's never ending. And not only is it never ending, it's often changing along the way. So you have to stay current day in and day out. You know, for a long time in this country, Curtis, we've tracked productivity growth with wage growth. You want higher wages for employees, you've got to make each one of those employees more valuable. Well, if I'm putting off investing in a new piece of technology, if I'm putting off investing in a new piece of equipment, well, that's slowing down not just my business, but my employees' productivity growth. The real economic factor there of allowing folks to depreciate today, to avoid depreciation and expense today, is that folks will come out put all of those decisions they've been putting off for years because it wasn't the right time economically. You've got the double whammy of immediate expensing and more money in your pocket from the tax cuts, which is putting more Americans in positions where they can be more productive and they can then bring home more money for their family. Time and time again, you look at these provisions that are in the tax code that look like they're for businesses. They're not. They're for the folks who sign the fronts of paychecks so that their employees who get those paychecks are going to be able to take home more money at the end of the day. Depreciation changing to expensing, one of the biggest stimulative effects that we have in the tax code.
Yep.
I heard a hallelujah, didn't I?
Right.
Well, I ran a small business for 20 years, and whenever we looked at actually buying a new piece of equipment, the first thing you did is you called your tax consultant, and they would tell you how much you really should spend now versus rolling it out, because you have to schedule out your depreciation. I did have a business owner contact me recently and said, thank you for the stability. Rob brought up an important point, is predictability and stability. I had a business owner tell me one time, he said, look, if you're going to tax me 70%, just tell me you're going to do it, because I've got to plan 10 years out. And that's really our way our tax code operated, because every year we would do what was called tax extenders. We would just do another temporary something with depreciation, or just a temporary tax cut. And so businesses would wait sometimes till the end of the year, till another omnibus came or another last minute piece of spending CR that you could tack this onto. And so what we've done is given stability and predictability to this. And so this one business owner, he told me, we were looking at buying several pieces of equipment, and we were going to buy a little bit now and a little bit in the future. But as soon as this passed, we bought it all in one chunk, because we can depreciate it now. That gives them the ability. Now, you buy a new piece of manufacturing equipment, you got to have the people to run it.
Yeah.
So instead of just buying a couple of pieces to improve the productivity, they're buying a whole suite of pieces of manufacturing equipment, which means you have to have the contractors to install it, you have to have the maintainers to maintain it, and you have to have the people to operate it. So that cost savings from the depreciation is going to go right back into the people that allow him to expand, to grow his business, and meet the needs of the consumers.
Oh, that's a good deal.
And it's also the impact on the companies that are manufacturing and selling the equipment and the products that those companies need to grow their businesses and have more productivity. So there is that sort of so on and so on and so on cascading impact that we are really starting to experience right now. And we're going to see more of that in the coming months.
Well, let's talk about how the tax cut has affected another way it's affected families. Looking at the standard deduction for couples, what was the law, and how did this Tax Cut and Jobs Act impact the standard deduction, and what's that going to do for people filing taxes and for people looking at, the bottom line on their budgets?
Well, what it did for the standard deduction is double it. So for individuals, $6,000 to $12,000. For couples, $12,000 to $24,000. And it simplified the code so that more people could file a simplified postcard version of their tax return. Importantly, what all of this has done, whether an individual is going to do a standard deduction or they're going to itemize, is we have created extraordinary consumer confidence. And when people feel confident about what is happening in their lives, they have more money in their pockets. That flows out in so many different ways across our community, not just in people wanting to buy a new car or fix up their home, but their desire to be a part of a community nonprofit and be able to be more supportive to organizations like the Drake House, be able to bump up their contribution to their favorite charity just a little bit. So the impacts go really, really broadly, and when you put in the lower rates with the higher standard deduction, you have the doubling of the tax credit for child care tax credit, moving that threshold up to, I believe, $400,000 plus, meaning more families can be able to participate in that child tax credit. So all of that comes down to the bottom line, whether it is in that paycheck, take-home pay for the month, or at the end of the year when those individuals or that family is filing their tax return and seeing a lower overall amount that they have to pay to the federal and state government.
For some families, Curtis, it is going to be about more money in the pocket because they weren't deducting $24,000 a year last year. They will be this next year. But for other families, it's about simplification. And tax reform was both sides of that. What can we do to put more money in families' pockets, but what can we do to make it easier to pay the federal government the money that you're being charged in your tax bill day in and day out? How many folks have mine's a shoebox that I collect the receipts in and the donation things. Anybody have a more creative thing than a shoebox that they use to keep all those receipts in? Over and over and over again, whether the hat's going around in your Sunday school class or the basket's going around at the Rotary Club, folks say, hey, will you kick in to help a family in need? Will you kick in to support this? And the answer is, yes, we will. Not because the government said they'd pay us to, but because it's the right thing to do in our community. When you had to itemize all of those for a family of a middle income, those families didn't take advantage of that discount. They still gave. They still supported their neighbors, but they didn't see the tax benefit of it. By doubling that standard deduction, we're now going to see that families get every single benefit that they would have otherwise gotten. And guess what? When families have more money in their pocket in our community, Curtis, that means they're giving away more money to help their neighbors in their times of need.
And they're probably spending more, too, in their businesses.
So the benefit of the standard doubling the standard deduction is really twofold. As Rob alluded to, it's been incredible for families. For instance, we received a lot of emails and phone calls in my office here and in Washington, D.C. after tax reform with tons of stories of businesses and individuals who were benefiting from it. But the one that probably was the most impactful to me came from a 14-year-old boy in Kennesaw, Georgia, just right up the interstate here. 14-year-old boy. Now, we got someone from Kennesaw here,
All right.
where at one time required you to own a gun to live in the town, So this 14-year-old boy writes my office thanking me for the tax cut that his parents got. And I was this is great that this young boy is that interested. And so because of the tax deduction and the doubling of their standard deduction, because of the cut in the taxes and because of the bonus that his dad received, they literally have more money in their pocket. Now, this young man had a dream. You always teach our kids, dream big. You can achieve anything that you want to dream. We kind of lost that because the government put too many obstacles in the way of the dream. Well, he had a dream of being a pilot. Now, this is one of the areas that we need a lot of pilots right now. We have a shortage of pilots, and I always have people coming to me with different ideas of a new government program of how to get more pilots. Well, the best way to get more pilots is allow a child to dream of being a pilot and give him the ability to find a path to get there. So that's, I mean, let them.
Whether it's pilots or doctors or whatever we're talking about, that's the way to get it.
So this young man said he always wanted to be a pilot, but as a pilot myself, I can tell you it's expensive, right? And there was just no way his family could afford it. And you can start pilot training at 14 years old. So he said, with the money that his parents are saving and that bonus, they are going to start paying for him to get pilot lessons, flying lessons at 14 years old. He's going to achieve a dream that he's had, and now he wants information of how he can prepare himself for the Air Force Academy. So this is really just catapulted a young man's dreams that he can achieve, and he's thanking us because we just let his parents keep more of their own money so they would have the means for him to fulfill his dream. Now, the second fold of this is the benefit it's had to small businesses. This doubling the tax deduction. I met with the owner of several small, I think we call them casual, they're a little step up from fast food restaurants, right? Casual restaurant. And he met with me a little over a year ago, and he said, my biggest problem is keeping entry-level employees because they will come on and we'll start them at much higher than minimum wage. But they'll work for a month or two and realize they were actually doing better back on government programs. And he said, even though they're great employees, we could not keep them because they were doing better going back on government programs. What the standard tax deduction, doubling the standard tax deduction has done is it's made it now where if you make up to about $11.50 per hour for a married couple, you pay no taxes. So now it's actually given incentive. We still have to address the other issue with reforming of our system on the welfare system, which we're going to be working on this year. But what it's done is it's actually made it to, because what happens is these entry-level employees come on and they realize, wait a second, I thought I was making this much per hour, but now I'm seeing the government is taking out this much, and now I have to pay for health care that's skyrocketed. So I'm better off just letting the government provide everything. Well, now some of them are there's no taxes being paid. And so it's more in their pocket, and it's stimulating these folks to stay in the workforce and actually find a path out of dependency. And so the small businesses are beginning to benefit from that as well.
Well, I hadn't even thought of that. That's amazing. For those entry-level workers, it gives them an incentive to keep the job rather than keep the food stamps.
That's right.
That's amazing. That's great.
And when many of them, when they get that first paycheck and they see how much the government is taking out, they become Republicans overnight.
I still remember what that felt like. I was like, what? Sticking on the same subject, child care, daycare, elder care. What's in this? What's in this for families who have to deal with that, who are paying for elder care, an elderly parent or a dependent member of the family, and child care, in fact?
Yeah, well, we saw the doubling of the child tax credit. You'll remember that was a Georgia thing. That was Newt Gingrich and those Republicans back in 1995 who began that push for the per child tax credit. You saw it double this cycle from 1,000 to 2,000, and that's real money for that growing family. You also saw the discussion of a dependent care tax credit expansion for the first time in a long time. What you can imagine is the government's going to be your partner in taking care of an elderly loved one. It's just going to be Medicare and Medicaid in an institution where the partnership is going to exist, instead of in your home where you want your loved one to be and where your loved one would rather be. To Barry's point earlier, we don't have to have the federal government take care of us. We could just have the federal government put the incentives in the right line so we can do what we believe is best for our families to begin with. It was a big issue right to the very end of the tax reform discussion. How is it that we can make sure we're doing as much as we possibly can for families who are struggling to support one another? And I call a doubling quite a step in the right direction.
Well, that's terrific. There is so much more we could get to. I am so sorry. I know you're all going to say, please, we're not tired of winning yet, but we got to wrap this up here. And I want to thank everybody, Congressman Handel, Woodall, and Loudermilk. Please remain seated here. Thank you all. And for our very next speaker, and very soon we will be joined by the Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence. So thank you. Let's thank the panel. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Barry. We'll get off.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great.
Before tax reform, Americans were paying more taxes than ever, and our businesses were being taxed higher than any other nation in the industrialized world.
Our self-destructive tax code cost Americans millions and millions of jobs, trillions of dollars. The tax code is so complicated that more than 90% of Americans need professional help to do their own taxes. This enormous complexity is very unfair.
Even worse, jobs and companies moved overseas, wages sat stagnant, and economic growth hovered around 2%.
We need a competitive tax code that creates more jobs and higher wages for Americans. It's time to give American workers the pay raise that they've been looking for many, many years. $3.2 trillion, just think of it, in tax cuts for American families, including doubling the standard deduction and doubling the child tax credit. The typical family of four earning $75,000 will see an income tax cut of more than $2,000.
This gets us better wages, bigger paychecks, a simpler tax system. This gets the American economy competitive in the global economy.
We are going to bring at least $4 trillion back into this country country, money that was frozen overseas.
People see their paychecks getting bigger in February because withholding tables have adjusted to reflect their tax cuts. When businesses are keeping more of what they earn, when they can write off their expensing investments in their businesses and hire more people.
The results have been bigger than anyone thought possible.
AT&T plans to increase U.S. capital spending $1 billion and provide $1,000 special bonus to more than 200,000 U.S. employees, and that's because of what we did.
AT&T, Bank of America, Comcast, American Airlines, Walmart. Hundreds of companies are giving employees nearly $2 billion in annual bonuses and raises. Major corporations like Apple are bringing billions of dollars back home.
This economy is already rolling at 3% growth, which people told the president during the campaign.
They laughed at him.
They laughed. They said it would take years to get to 3%. And letting the American people keep more of what they earn, by letting middle-income Americans have more spending power, by lowering taxes on businesses large and small, that we're going to outperform those growth projections.
Rising wages, growing business, a booming economy. Tax reform is putting American workers first and creating a new era of prosperity for our businesses and families. After years of stagnation, recession, and hardship, America is back.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, Administrator Scott Pruitt.
Well, hello, Georgia. It is wonderful to be with you. And you may not know this about me, but I served as the Oklahoma Attorney General for a while. So as I arrive here in Georgia, I'm thinking about that Rose Bowl game just a few months ago, where Georgia kind of showed us a few things. But hopefully this next year we'll be able to spend some time in another game and we'll have a better second half. But it is good to be with you here in Georgia. Good to be with the Vice President. And there's some exciting things happening across the country. There's optimism across the country with this president's leadership. This president, as you know, as he started serving, is focused on making sure that America is put first. He's put America first, not just with respect to our security and our safety, but he's put America first with respect to how we run our economy. And you know this. But at the federal level, before the president arrived, we had agencies in Washington, D.C. that were trying to tell folks all over Georgia and all over the country how to do their business in ways that were counterproductive to the economy. And the EPA was at the top of that list. And the president put me in charge of the EPA to get reform, to get changes made, to make sure that we trust people across this country as opposed to treat them like adversaries. And I will tell you, it is exciting to see all over the country what's happening. Just in the first year that we've been on the job, we at the agency have saved over $1 billion in regulatory costs for the American people. The administration... President Trump, the administration as a whole, $8 billion. And when you think about those tax cuts, very important to the American people to grow the economy, but when you partner that with regulatory reform, it is powerful. And consumer confidence is up, the economy is strong, unemployment is low, and people for the first time in a number of years are optimistic about the future. And it's all because of the courage and the dedication and commitment of President Trump. So there's some exciting things happening. I'd just like to mention a couple to you, the changes that we see at the EPA. The first, and you know this well, the Waters of the United States rule. President Obama, his EPA took something called the WOTUS rule and redefined a water of the United States under the Clean Water Act to include a puddle, a dry creek bed, and drainage ditches, and said that those were waters of the United States all over the country. That was not about clean water. That was about power. That was making sure that private property owners across the country had to go to the EPA in Washington, D.C. for the first time to receive permission to use their land as they'd always used. You know what? President Trump on February 28th of last year signed an executive order. I was with him in the Roosevelt Room, and he told me, Scott, get that fixed. Within 8 minutes after that executive order being signed by the president, I had the paperwork in place to get rid of the Waters of the United States rule, and that's happening right now. And that's all because of the leadership and, again, the commitment of President Trump and Vice President Pence with respect to getting things done. And that's important because we have someone in the White House today, a former CEO, a former businessman, who understands what it means to get results. It's wonderful to focus on agencies at Washington, D.C. actually producing, actually getting things done for the American people. And that putting America first is something that's translating not only with WOTUS, but also this president got us out of that very, very bad agreement, the Paris Accord, that put America last. And let me tell you, it took a lot of courage and fortitude. A lot of courage and fortitude for the president to stand in the Rose Garden last June and say to the world, we have nothing to be apologetic about with respect to how we advance the environment in the United States. In fact, we do it better than anybody in the world. And to be part of an agreement that was signed in Paris, that put America last, that caused our economy to slow, that cost us jobs and made us be apologetic, he took the stand to say no more and exited that Paris Accord, and it sent a tremendous message across the world that we're going to put America first in the future. And the president did a great job with that decision. The last thing I'll share with you with respect to the president's leadership and the administration is not only fixing WOTUS, not only fixing issues around the Paris Accord, but we have to understand as a country that what is really true environmentalism when you think about it. The past administration told us it was prohibition, that though we've been blessed with all these natural resources as a country, that we can feed the world and power the world. The last administration said to put up fences and said do not touch. That's not the leadership of this president. This president understands that stewardship should be our focus, not prohibition. That to whom much is given, much is required. And we should take the natural resources God has blessed us with and use them to bless mankind both domestically and internationally. And this president is leading the charge to make that happen. So as we gather here this afternoon, take comfort in the fact that you've got a president, you've got an administration that has your back and is working every single day to truly make America great again. God bless you, God bless Georgia, and we'll see you soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Governor of Georgia, Governor Nathan Deal.
Good afternoon. To those of you who are not from Georgia, we want to say welcome. To those of you who are from Georgia, we want to say thank you for allowing me and the other members of the General Assembly who are in session today to be able to administer the laws of your state, hopefully in a fashion that you approve of. Now, we are very blessed in Georgia on many fronts. First of all, I am very proud to say that we are now the 8th largest population state. We've jumped from number 10 to number 8 in about the last 7 years, and we're continuing to grow. In our efforts to recover from the Great Recession, we didn't do like some other states who decided they couldn't live on less money and therefore had to raise taxes on their businesses and their citizens. We went the other way. We cut taxes, and we have grown ourselves out of the recession. We have added almost 700,000 new private sector jobs over the last 7 years, a record pace that outstrips the United States government. And in the process of doing that, we have dropped our unemployment rate by about 6 whole percentage points, and that is unprecedented. Now, as I said, our General Assembly is in session today. As most of you from Georgia know, we have a 40-day session. And we are in this next week will end on Sine Die on next Thursday. It'll be the 40th day, and we will have concluded the legislative action this year. Now, there are a lot of good things that we have already seen go through the General Assembly, and I look forward to being able to sign those measures in the very near future. But there are also some things that have not necessarily attracted as much attention as I think they should. And one of those things is an historic tax cut. Now, I want to say as a preface to that, something that a lot of people have never taken notice of, and that is that Georgia cut its tax rate in our personal income tax, our corporate tax, and we made other adjustments in doubling the basic standard exemption, et cetera. But the reason we were able to do that was this. It was because the federal government cut the federal tax rates. And we, in order to respond to that, followed suit. For the first time since 1937, when our personal income tax was put in place, for the first time, we have cut the personal income tax rate. We have cut the corporate rate from time to time over the years, but nothing in recent years. So this is indeed a $5 billion tax cut for the people and citizens and taxpayers of the state of Georgia, but it would not have been possible without the leadership of President Trump and Vice President Pence and the members of the Republican portion of the Congress. Which brings me to my subject that I'm really supposed to be here to talk about. And that is, I was so pleased to see the selection for the vice president of this country on the ticket when it was first proposed. And the reason was because I knew Mike Pence. He and I had served together in the United States House of Representatives for about a decade. He had risen through the ranks there and showed himself to be a truly exceptional leader. And then, following my lead, I would claim, he left Congress and ran for governor, too. I think I was one cycle ahead of him, but thank you all for your support during my 2 terms as your governor. Mike followed suit. He was elected the governor of his state of Indiana, and I had the opportunity to work with him as a member of the Republican Governors Association. Please welcome the Vice President of the United States.
Well, hello, Georgia. Thank you, Governor. Thank you for those great words. Thank you for your great leadership here in Georgia. It is great to be back in the Peach State. In fact, last Saturday, my family and I actually celebrated St. Patty's Day in the great city of Savannah, Georgia. And today I'm honored to be here in Atlanta with men and women who helped elect a president and leaders in Congress who just 3 months ago, yesterday, enacted historic tax cuts to put America first. You did it, Georgia. And in fact, let me begin today by bringing greetings from a friend of mine. When I left the Oval Office today, I could tell he was just a little bit jealous about where I was headed. And he wanted me to tell all of you that he loves Georgia. I bring greetings from the 45th President of the United States of America, President Donald Trump. We love Georgia. And I'm here today to talk about the progress that we've all made together over the past year. But before I get started, let me take a moment to acknowledge that Georgia lost one of its greatest leaders today, Zell Miller. Zell was a leader of great character and great integrity. He dedicated his life to public service and to serving this country. He was a United States Marine, a governor, a United States Senator. And the difference he made in the life of this great state and the life of this nation will impact this country for generations to come. Zell Miller was a great champion of public education, and as governor, he helped establish the Hope Scholarship that opened so many doors of opportunity for students across this state. And above all, Zell was a proud Georgian, and he always put the interests of the hardworking men and women of Georgia first, even when it wasn't popular within his own political party. He remains an inspiration, not just to people of Georgia, but to leaders all across this country on this day. So let me say, our prayers are with his family and all those who loved and cherished and admired this great man. And I know I speak for all of Georgia when I say that Zell Miller will be missed. He was a great Georgian. He was a great American. And we will long remember the life and legacy and contributions of Zell Miller. Thank you for that. And to Governor Deal, thank you for that wonderful introduction and for your lifetime of leadership and service to the great state of Georgia. I actually had the chance to get to know your governor when we both served in Congress together. But his 2 terms as governor have left the Peach State stronger and safer and more prosperous than ever before in the history of this state. 700,000 new jobs in 7 years is an incredible record. Would you all mind getting on your feet and showing the 82nd governor of the great state of Georgia and his wonderful wife, Sandra, just how much we appreciate their leadership and the difference that they've made in Georgia? And with us today are also 3 other friends of mine and great friends of our president, leaders in the House of Representatives who work every day to put Georgia first and to put America first. Representatives Karen Handel, Rob Woodall, and Barry Loudermilk. Where are you? I also want to recognize a special guest you just heard from a few minutes ago. I gave him a ride here. He is a great champion of American workers and of freedom in the marketplace. He's working tirelessly to unleash American energy at the EPA. Join me in thanking our EPA Administrator, Scott Pruitt, one more time. He is a great, great leader. And finally, I'd like to thank the hosts of today's event who brought us all together, an organization that's fighting to promote the policies that are making a real difference in the life of the state of Georgia and our entire nation. Join me in thanking America First Policies for bringing us all together on a Friday afternoon. You know, I'm here in the Peach State today, first and foremost, just to say thank you. Thank you, Georgia. Thank you for everything you've done to stand with our administration, not only in that election in 2016, but in every day since. Because of your support and your hard work, it's been a year of action. It's been a year of results. In a word, it's been a year of promises made and promises kept. Even earlier today, in the spending bill the President signed into law, we saw the promises of this administration kept, one after another. As the President made clear, under this bill, the government, unfortunately, is still too big. It still spends too much. And the bill wasn't perfect, but y'all deserve to know it is chock full of examples of how this president fought to keep the promises that he made to the people of Georgia and to the American people. And it all begins with providing for the common defense. National defense is now the top priority. this country and this administration. You know, President Trump promised to rebuild our military and restore the arsenal of democracy. Just a few hours ago, I was standing nearby when President Donald Trump signed the largest investment in our national defense in American history. The President promised to increase take-home pay for men and women who wear the uniform of the United States, and he did just that. The largest pay increase for our armed forces in nearly 10 years, signed into law today. You know, and today I can tell from where I'm standing that we're joined by an awful lot of heroes in this room. In fact, there's a group of heroes from Dobbins Air Reserve Base and Robins Air Force Base here in Georgia who are serving the United States Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps. Would you all just mind showing these men and women in uniform how much we appreciate them stepping up to defend our nation? You know, and it isn't just those on active duty the President promised to support. He also promised to support America's veterans. And I'm pleased to report to you in the bill that he just signed, we gave the Department of Veterans Affairs the resources they need to completely eliminate the backlog for veterans once and for all. And we are going to make sure our veterans get the support and the health care in real time that they earned in the uniform of the United States. Our President also promised to protect our homeland and secure our borders. As I stand before you today, I'm pleased to report that in little more than a year, illegal crossings at our southern border have been cut nearly in half, and with the $1.6 billion of funding in the bill just signed into law, the United States will immediately begin construction of nearly 100 miles of a new border wall. And let me make you a promise. When it comes to the wall, we're going to build it all. Now, the President also promised to appoint strong conservatives to our federal courts at every level. And this President not only appointed Justice Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court of the United States, but he also set a record of the most Court of Appeal judges confirmed in a single year in American history, and they're all conservative men and women that are going to make you proud. President Trump also promised to stand with America's men and women in law enforcement. And I promise you today, with resources in this legislation and with respect, we once again are giving men and women who wear the uniform of law enforcement and public safety the resources and respect they deserve. So it's about strength abroad, strength on our borders, but it's also about safety and security here at home, in our neighborhoods, our homes, and our schools, where it matters most. All of our hearts are still broken in the wake of the terrible shootings that have beset communities in recent days, claimed innocent lives. You know, our President promised, in the wake of the tragic school shooting in Parkland, Florida, that this time America would take action because no child should ever be in danger in an American school. No parent should ever fear for the safety of their child when they drop them off at school in the morning. And I'm pleased to report to you that the legislation signed today includes more than $2 billion to improve school safety. It bolsters and improves our criminal background check system and gives parents and schools new tools and new resources to keep our kids safe. President Trump also promised to do more than any administration to combat a crisis that's impacting families here in Georgia and all across this country, the scourge of opiate abuse and addiction. There's virtually no community, large or small, that hasn't been impacted. And the legislation just signed today will actually invest a record amount, more than any time in history, $6 billion to end this epidemic. And as President Trump said in Manchester, New Hampshire earlier this week, we will make this the generation that ends the scourge of opiate addiction in America. He promised to rebuild America, and I'm also happy to report to you the bill just signed. The governor will be happy about this too. We've got another $21 billion to rebuild our infrastructure, and that includes $50 million for that expansion project at the Port of Savannah, which is so critical to the growth and prosperity of the state of Georgia. Now, as the President said today, this bill is far from perfect. I mean, the truth is the processes we have in Congress these days don't allow for perfection. In fact, the President said today it's no way to run a government. That's why the President and I are calling on Congress, starting today, to give this President the same authority that 44 governors have all across this country. The time has come to give the President of the United States of America the line item veto, so the President can fund the priorities of the American people and protect American taxpayers at the same time. So since day one of this administration, we've been working hard to keep the promises that we made to the people of Georgia. And when you look at the record over the last 14 months, it has been a record of promises made and promises kept. It's so humbling for me to be a part of it. Now, when you talk about all that we've done together, I came here today to really talk about what's happening in this economy. I mean, from early in this administration, we've been working with these great members of Congress to roll back the heavy hand of government on businesses large and small. In fact, I remember back on the campaign trail, maybe some of you do too, the President promised that he would repeal 2 federal regulations for every 1 new federal rule put on the books. Truth is, we didn't do that. With the support of our leaders in Congress, in the majorities in the House and the Senate, we've repealed 22 federal regulations for every new rule put on the federal books. It's true. In fact, President Trump has signed more laws rolling back federal red tape already than any president in American history. We promised to provide the American people relief from the disaster known as Obamacare. You know, today's actually the 8th anniversary of that failed law. And I'm happy to report to you that last December, the President signed legislation to repeal the Obamacare individual mandate. It's gone. It's off the books. We promised to unleash American energy, and this President from early on approved the Keystone and Dakota pipelines. We rolled back the Clean Power Plan, and as you just heard Scott Pruitt say, President Trump put America first when he withdrew the United States from the job-killing Paris Climate Accord. We promised to crack down on unfair trade practices as well. The President's taken decisive action to protect our steel and aluminum and forestry industries. And I'll make you a promise. Under President Donald Trump, the era of economic surrender is over. We are going to demand our trading partners give us fair and free and reciprocal trade that puts American workers first. And finally, what brought us all here today on a Friday afternoon, taking a break from watching basketball, is that this President promised to cut taxes across the board for working families and businesses and family farms. And 3 months ago yesterday, with the strong support of these leaders in the Congress and with the support of every Georgia Republican in the House of Representatives, President Donald Trump signed the largest tax cuts and tax reform in American history. That's promises made and promises kept. You know, we're just over a year into our administration, and the results are nothing short of remarkable. Because of your support, because of the leadership that you supported from the Oval Office to Capitol Hill to the State House here in Georgia. Since our election, American businesses have created nearly 3 million new jobs, including 40,000 new jobs in the Atlanta area alone. And unemployment in America hasn't been this low in 17 years. In February alone, the American economy actually created 313,000 new jobs in a single month. It was the best month for construction and manufacturing in 20 years. In fact, the only sector of the economy to lose jobs in the month of February was the federal government. I mean, here in the Peach State, thanks to the actions of our administration and the strong support of your representatives in Congress, and thanks to 7 years of Governor Nathan Deal's leadership, Georgia's economy is booming as never before. For 5 years running, Georgia has been ranked the best state in America to do business, and today, 17 Fortune 500 companies call Georgia home. Since our inauguration, unemployment in the Atlanta area has fallen by nearly 20%. And when it comes to good-paying jobs that make Georgia great, since Election Day 2016, businesses across the state have created over 23,000 new jobs in manufacturing and construction. You know what? You look around Georgia, you look around America, because of the leadership that you've supported, growth is back. Confidence is back. In a word, America is back with President Donald Trump in the White House. It's exciting. But as this president likes to say at this White House, that's just what we call a good start. Because the truth is, we believe the best days for American prosperity are yet to come, because these tax cuts are just starting to make a difference. I mean, think about it. I mean, we cut taxes for Georgia's working families. You could keep more of your hard-earned money. We cut taxes for Georgia's businesses so they can compete and win with companies anywhere around the world. We cut taxes for Georgia's farmers, too. And all of those tax cuts are only now actually beginning to take effect in the economy. So for everything that we're seeing happening, men and women of Georgia, it's only just begun. You know, earlier this week on National Agriculture Day, I was over at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And there's a great champion for rural America. You might have heard from him. A guy by the name of Sonny Perdue, who's now the Secretary of Agriculture for the United States of America. I mean, the truth is, in this White House, we know that agriculture is the essence of America. That's why, working with your leaders in Congress, with all the tax cuts that we passed, we also essentially eliminated the death tax for nearly every American farmer, and now farmers can deduct up to 100% of the cost of new equipment for the next 5 years. That's an affirmation of how important agriculture is to the American economy. You know, all told, when you put it all together in a pile, we believe our tax cuts are going to save the typical family of four here in Georgia more than $2,200 a year when they all take effect. But it's not just about lower taxes. Remember that. It's also about bigger paychecks. It's about bigger paychecks that come from businesses investing in American jobs and in American workers. In fact, we believe workers in Georgia can expect to see pay raises of more than $4,000 in the years ahead when these tax cuts all take effect. And we're already on our way. You know, in just the past 3 months, businesses large and small across this state have already announced plans to pay their workers more, to hand out bonuses, to provide better benefits for more than 75,000 Georgian workers, including bonuses here in Atlanta as high as $2,000 a person. Folks, that's great news for working families. I mean, a $1,000 bonus in the pocket of a working family makes a real difference. But not everybody thinks that. I mean, you might have heard that the woman that wants to be Speaker of the House again, Nancy Pelosi, said a $1,000 bonus at the end of the year was just crumbs. Did you hear that term? Now, I would like to remind you, humbly, I come from the Joseph A. Bank wing of the West Wing of the White House. You with me on that? Okay, good. When our kids were little, and Karen was at home with the kids, I mean, we had a term for an extra $1,000 in our paycheck at the end of the year. Christmas. Am I right? I mean, these bonuses and pay raises are making a real difference in the lives of America's working families. And I want to say very seriously, any leader who says $1,000 in the pockets of working families is crumbs is out of touch with the American people. So let me just take a moment for the people that have been making that difference, supporting the president, your leaders in Congress who stood with the president for these tax cuts, and so much more of what we're talking about here today. I want to thank your two great senators, Senator Johnny Isakson and Senator David Perdue, for their strong conservative leadership in the United States Senate. And you've already heard from three extraordinary members of Georgia's delegation to the House of Representatives, Karen Handel, Rob Woodall, and Barry Loudermilk. They are remarkable people, and I'm just so grateful for their support. But you know, I'm happy to report they might be the only ones here, but they're not alone among Georgia's Republicans. I'm pleased to report to all of you gathered here today that this agenda that we're celebrating, the accomplishments that we've been able to bring about, I'm pleased to report to you that every single Republican in the Georgia delegation to Congress voted for the tax cuts and voted to put Georgia and America first. Every step of the way, they were with us. But you know, for all that we've accomplished, truth is we still have more work to do. And in case you didn't notice, first off, remember that Georgia elected a builder to be president of the United States. And this president's going to rebuild America's roads and bridges and infrastructure and ports and give us the best infrastructure in the world. This year, we're also going to keep working to fix a broken immigration system that puts the best interests of American workers and American families first. We're going to continue to do everything. We're going to do everything in our power to confront the scourge of opiate addiction in this country. I promise each and every one of you that. And we're going to work our hearts out. We're working on developing non-addictive painkillers to cut opiate prescriptions. The goal is to cut opiate prescriptions by 1/3 over the next 3 years so we can prevent Americans from even becoming addicted in the first place. We're going to reduce the supply of illicit drugs, first and foremost by working to reduce the availability of them. And secondly, we're going to crack down. We're going to crack down on drug dealers. We're going to crack down on sanctuary cities. We're going to secure our borders, and we're going to get tougher on people that are selling drugs to our kids. And as the president said, that toughness includes the death penalty. And our administration is going to be working every opportunity the law allows to bring the maximum penalty against those who profit by the drug trade. As the president said on Monday, I say to all of you, failure is not an option. Addiction is not our future. And we're going to do whatever it takes, as I said before, to make this the generation that ends the opiate crisis in America. Folks, President Trump and I are just going to keep on delivering. We're going to keep on delivering on the promises that we made to the good people of Georgia with your support and with your help. But the president and I know that for all the progress that we've made, it's really not a reflection so much of what happens in the marbled halls of Washington, D.C., that we both know that the strength of this country is found in the hearts and the character and the work ethic and the patriotism of the American people. I mean, America is coming back. The resilience of America is now obvious not just to our fellow citizens, but to the wider world, because the American people are shining forth. By letting people keep more of what they earn, by getting the government out of the way, by making the right investments in ways that support a growing America. America is standing tall again. You see that resilience. And of course, you've seen that same resilience in the history of this storied city of Atlanta, Georgia. It's amazing to think just a few miles from here stands a monument that literally captures the essence of this city's history. Atlanta from the ashes. It shows a phoenix rising from the ashes, as you all well know, because that's exactly what Atlanta had done over the past century and a half. The city was destroyed over 150 years ago, but that wasn't the end of its history. It was just the beginning of a new history. And because of the resilience of your people and the determination and the vision and the faith of the people of Atlanta, this city has risen to become not one of the leading cities of the South, not one of the leading cities of America. This is one of the most dynamic cities in the world. The country looks on in Atlanta, really does, and watches with inspiration that spirit that has defined this great city over the last century and a half. That no matter what challenges you face, Atlanta continues to reach greater heights every day. And the country is proud, and I know Georgia is proud. That's the Atlanta spirit for you. It's evident in every part of this city, and I see it from where I'm standing in this room today. But as I close today, I encourage you to take that spirit from this gathering and talk about what you've heard here today. And I appreciate you coming out today on a Friday afternoon, a beautiful Friday here in Georgia. It was a lot colder where I left. And it was a lot colder up in New Hampshire. But I want you to leave here today, and I hope you'll stay involved, stay engaged. Everything that we've accomplished because of all of you. I mean, I didn't come here today, and I know these members of Congress feel the same way, to point to Washington of what they've done. But I came here today to talk about what you've done. Because of the president you elected, because of the leaders in the Congress that you've elected, because of the agenda that you supported, this country's coming back stronger and safer and more prosperous than ever before. And we're just really getting started. So leave here today, and I just encourage you to go out and tell the story to your friends, your loved ones, and your neighbors. I mean, tell them what they're not hearing on most of their cable television stations about all the good things that are happening in America. Tell them what we've accomplished. Say, you know what? I ran into Mike the other day, and he was talking about all this stuff that's happened in this country, all the things that we've accomplished together as Americans to revive and restore this nation and to restore American credibility and strength on the world stage. And say, I just wanted to tell you about it and tell you about the difference that it's making in the life of our city and our state and our nation. I mean, go out there and tell them we cut their taxes so they can keep more of what they earn. Tell them that we're restoring American strength at home and abroad so their families can sleep safe at night. Tell them that we're putting America back to work for them, not the other way around. And tell them that under President Donald Trump, the forgotten men and women of America are forgotten no more. Get out there and tell them. Tell them, Georgia, because it's true. You tell them. And I think Election Day surprised a few people. And we've been surprising them ever since, haven't we? Because Americans have been talking to each other. People have been seeing these results. They've been seeing common sense, conservative principles put into practice that have put America first. So I just encourage you to stay engaged. and to keep telling your neighbors and friends all the good things that are happening here and how the leadership in Georgia and the leadership you're sending to Washington, the leadership of that president's making a difference in their lives. And if you're of a mind in these challenging times where it seems like there's too much division in these United States of America, I'd encourage you to maybe do one more thing. You know, there's an old verse that Americans have clung to throughout our nation's history, and it's been true for millennia. I still believe it's true today. It says, if his people who are called by his name will humble themselves and pray, he'll hear from heaven and he'll heal their land. And I truly believe that if we pray for America, that God will heal this one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So pray for America. And pray for all who serve Him each and every day. So thanks for being here today. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. I look forward to saying hello to as many of you as can linger afterwards. I leave here today with renewed confidence. I really do. That with the continued support of the good people of Georgia, with continued great leadership at your State House, people like Governor Nathan Deal, with these great Georgian leaders in the Congress of the United States fighting for you every day, with President Donald Trump in the White House, and with God's help, I know in my heart we will make America safe again. We will make America prosperous again. And to borrow a phrase, we will make America great again. Thank you very much. God bless you. God bless Georgia, and God bless the United States of America.
The hearing will come to order. The Strategic Forces Subcommittee meets today to review the administration's FY 2019 budget request for missile defense spending and to discuss related policies with our witnesses. This is an incredibly important and timely discussion, given the increasing missile threats facing our nation. Over the past year, we have witnessed dangerous advances in North Korea's ballistic missile capabilities. Kim Jong-un conducted a record number of ballistic missile tests, including tests of 2 new systems that appear to have range sufficient to hold the United States at risk. The administration has responded to this growing threat. In September, the Department of Defense submitted a request to reprogram about $400 million in FY 2017 funds towards urgent missile defense requirements. Additionally, in November, the administration amended its FY 2018 budget request to include almost $4 billion in additional funds for missile defense and defeat activities, including the expansion of our ground-based mid-course defense system by an additional 20 interceptors by 2023. This robust support for missile defense continues in the FY 2019 request, which includes almost a 25% increase in the Missile Defense Agency's budget. While I strongly support these increases, it is this subcommittee's responsibility to ensure they meet the warfighters' needs today and invest in advanced technology to stay ahead of tomorrow's threats. Furthermore, while North Korea ballistic missiles remain the principal threat against which our homeland missile defenses are arrayed, it represents only a portion of the broader missile threat. A report released last year by the National Air and Space Intelligence Center noted that Russia retains the largest force of strategic ballistic missiles, while China has the most active and diverse ballistic missile development program in the world. And both nations continue to invest in hypersonic and cruise missiles designed to strike forward, deployed U.S. forces, and in some cases, the homeland. Testifying on these issues before us today is a distinguished panel. We have John Rood, Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, and General Lori Robertson, Commander of U.S. Northern Command and NORAD. And General Robinson, as this is likely the last time we will hear from you in anticipation of your retirement, I also want to thank you for your 36 years of distinguished service to this country. Thank you, ma'am. I think I speak for all of us when I say it has been a pleasure to work with you, and we wish you the best of luck. We're also joined by Lieutenant General Sam Greaves, Director of the Missile Defense Agency, and Lieutenant General James Dickinson, who holds the title of Commanding General, United States Army Space and Missile Defense Command, among many others. Thank you all for being with us today. We look forward to your comments, and I would now like to recognize our ranking member, Senator Donnelly, for any opening remarks he would like to make.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank all the witnesses and General Robinson, congratulations. Thank you for all your service to our country, for all the amazing things you have done for our nation to make it stronger. I want to thank Senator Fisher for holding this hearing. Let me also thank today's witnesses for testifying. We very much appreciate your time and the work you do every day in service of our nation. Protecting our country, our forward deployed troops, and our allies around the world is of the utmost importance. And the threats have not stood still since the subcommittee last met on this subject. For just one example, as General Greaves and I discussed yesterday, North Korea has made rapid progress on its intercontinental ballistic missile capability. As we await the release of the Missile Defense Review, it's important we take this opportunity to review the fiscal year 19 budget request to ensure it provides sufficient resources to continue the work of getting our missile defense systems to perform reliably and effectively. We also need to continue improving our sensor and discrimination capabilities so we have a better picture of the threats. And we need to continue to conduct smart simulation and testing before we commit to buying new technologies. While we continue to improve the homeland defense systems, we should not take our eyes off the ball when it comes to protecting our deployed troops and reassuring our allies and partners. The demand from our combatant commanders for Aegis ships, THAAD, and Patriot batteries remains high. We need to consider how we can best allocate these systems and effectively train the warfighters who will operate them to provide the protection that is needed in today's demanding environment. Again, thank you for coming today. We look forward to the dialogue and to your testimony. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Donnelly. Secretary Rood, I'd like to welcome you if you would like to make comments to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Ranking Member Donnelly, distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today on behalf of the administration's fiscal year 19 budget request. With regard to the security environment, today the United States faces an increasingly complex security environment in which the central challenge to our prosperity and security is the reemergence of long-term strategic competition driven by revisionist powers in China and Russia. Although they pose separate challenges with unique attributes, both China and Russia seek to reshape the world order and change territorial borders. Consequently, they pose increasing security threats to the United States and our allies and partners. Long-term competition with China and Russia requires increased U.S. and allied partner military investment because of the magnitude of the threats they pose today and the potential that such threats will increase in the future. We must also simultaneously strengthen our efforts to deter and counter the clear and present danger posed by rogue regimes such as North Korea and Iran. The U.S. military remains the strongest in the world. However, our advantages are eroding as potential adversaries modernize and build up their conventional and nuclear forces. In particular, they are fielding a broad and expanding arsenal of new and more advanced missiles capable of threatening the U.S., our forces abroad, and its allies and partners. Although this picture is unsettling and not what we desire, as Secretary of Defense Mattis has pointed out, and I quote, "We must look reality in the eye and see the world as it is, not as we wish it to be," end quote. The administration has heeded this admonition in recent strategic reviews in the National Security Strategy, the National Defense Strategy, as well as the Nuclear Posture Review. They reflect a consistent and pragmatic assessment of the threats and uncertainties we face in the future security environment. Our task at DoD is to ensure that the U.S. military advantage endures, and in combination with other elements of national power, that we are fully able to meet the increasing challenges to our national security. With this as a strategic context, let me turn to a discussion of the FY19 budget request for missile defense and the policies, programs, and capabilities it supports. The Department's budget request supports the President's direction set out in the National Security Strategy to deploy a layered missile defense system to protect the American homeland from North Korean and Iranian missile threats. The request also supports regional missile defenses to protect our deployed forces, allies, and partners. Our missile defense system not only protects the United States, it strengthens deterrence of war and assurance of allies and partners. Today, the GMD, or Ground-Based Missile Defense Mid-Course Defense System, provides protection for the nation. General Greaves and others will discuss some of its attributes, but as noted by you, Senator Fisher, in September of last year, DoD requested the reprogramming of 2017 funding of more than $400 million to counter the North Korean missile threat. We appreciate the support that we received from Congress for this request. A portion of these funds support the important homeland defense activities, including initiating work on the procurement of 20 additional ground-based interceptors in Alaska as early as 2023, which will bring the total to 64 fielded interceptors. This reprogramming also funded a service life extension to the Cobra Dane radar in Alaska and software upgrades to the sea-based X-band radar, which are both essential elements of our homeland defense. Of course, last November, the President submitted an amendment to the FY18 budget request for $4 billion of additional funding for missile defense, which includes construction of a new missile field at Fort Greely, Alaska, and additional procurement funding for the necessary 20 GBIs. The FY19 budget request includes $9.9 billion for the Missile Defense Agency and $3 billion for air and missile defense programs in the services. This budget funds a more capable ground-based interceptor with a redesigned kill vehicle, the deployment of new missile tracking and discrimination sensors in Alaska, Hawaii, and the Pacific region, and a new space-based kill assessment capability. These near-term investments will enable us to obtain substantially more performance and efficiency out of the GMD system necessary to meet the evolving threat. We are also moving forward to bolster homeland defenses against air and cruise missile threats. In 2018, we will complete the first part of a two-phase effort to provide effective surveillance against missile threats to the national capital region. Doing so will enhance our ability to detect, track, and investigate suspicious aircraft as well as cruise missiles, and when necessary, cue our missile defense systems against the full spectrum of air threats. We're on a track to begin the second phase of this effort in fiscal year 19. We're also looking at technologies and concepts that could be used to provide scalable and deployable options for expanding this capability. The Department's FY19 budget request also continues deployment of regional missile defenses tailored to meet the missile threats to U.S. forces abroad and allies and partners in Europe, the Middle East, and the Indo-Pacific region. The budget enhances our regional missile defense capability through additional Patriot missiles, as well as THAAD, SM-3 Block 1B, and SM-3 Block 2A interceptors. Our focus is on developing and fielding capabilities that are mobile and relocatable, which allows us flexibility to respond to a crisis or conflict wherever it emerges. We're also encouraging our allies and partners in Europe, the Middle East, and in Asia to acquire MD capabilities and strengthen missile defense cooperation in order to move towards a more interoperable and integrated missile defense architecture. Looking forward, it's clear potential adversaries are modernizing and expanding their missile capabilities. We must ensure that our missile defense investment and strategy enable us to meet the most dangerous missile threats today while enabling us to counter future missile threats as they expand. Areas for work on advanced technology included improved discrimination in our sensor architecture, lasers to intercept offensive missiles during their most vulnerable boost phase of flight, evaluating space-based sensor concepts, and the multi-object kill vehicle. And let me conclude by saying that in an increasingly complex and threatening security environment, DoD must sustain the capabilities needed to deter and defend against attacks on our homeland. U.S. deployed forces abroad, allies, and partners. We must make the investments needed to address the ongoing erosion of our operational advantages and remain the preeminent military power in the world. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Your full statements will be included in the record. General Robinson.
Ma'am, sir, first of all, thank you very much. I am certainly honored to be sitting here and testifying with this committee, especially along with my brothers. It's an honor for me. But what's been mentioned is the strategic environment and threats facing our nation continue to evolve, as you have both mentioned. Our adversaries are taking deliberate steps to extend their operational reach and are developing new capabilities to range targets in North America, in the United States and Canada. At U.S. Northern Command and NORAD, we understand the urgency of keeping pace with these evolving threats. We also recognize that North Korea represents the most immediate threat to our homeland and therefore remains NORTHCOM's highest priority. I'm confident that the ground-based mid-course defense system can defeat the threat today, and I've testified in front of every committee and have said so, and I remain confident. And I strongly support the continued improvements to the ballistic missile defense enterprise in order to maintain our advantage. We continue to work with the Missile Defense Agency, the intelligence community, and other combatant commands as part of our collaborative effort to outpace the threat. I'm grateful, quite frankly, for the committee's approval of the FY17 above threshold reprogramming and support the budget amendment. And this will increase the system's capability and capacity. Under my NORAD responsibility, advanced cruise missiles with a low radar cross-section represent a challenge to our air defense systems. Russia continues to modernize its delivery systems, long-range bombers and strategic submarines, capable of launching from distances not previously seen, reducing the indication and warnings we are likely to receive from a combat launch. To defend against these advanced cruise missiles, we must make prudent investments, as you both have talked about, and we appreciate in advanced sensors and defensive weapon systems to protect our nation's vital assets. The men, the women, the warriors of U.S. Northern Command and NORAD stand united in a common purpose, ready to face the threats to the United States and Canada today, and we are evolving to face the threats of tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, you need to know we have the watch. Ma'am, sir, as you both have indicated, I'm getting to have the privilege to retire. I have to tell you both that after 36 years of serving my nation, and after these last 2 years of having this sacred responsibility of defending our nation, I want you both to know, I want all of you to understand my gratitude and my heartfelt appreciation for what you do to support NORAD and U.S. Northern Command every day to our nation's armed forces, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, civilians, and in my NORAD hat, the Canadians. What you do each and every day. You know, people say to me, hey, thank you for what you do, but I know I can't do what I do if you don't do what you and your backbenchers do each and every day. So thank you very much. I welcome your questions.
Thank you, General.
Yes, ma'am.
General Greaves.
Chairman Fisher, Ranking Member Donnelly, distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for this opportunity to testify on the Missile Defense Agency's budget request for fiscal year 2019. I would first like to express our appreciation to this committee for its support of the department's above-threshold reprogramming request in September 2017 and the FY 2018 budget amendment, which provided reprogramming approval and emergency funding to enhance the nation's missile defeat and defense capabilities. I'm also pleased to report that we are executing those funds with the utmost urgency. I would also like to take a second to thank the thousands of men and women across government and industry who work tirelessly every single day across the globe in support of our nation's ballistic missile defense system. They remain our asymmetric advantage. Over the past year, we've been given a clear and unambiguous message from the President that we are committed to expanding and improving a state-of-the-art missile defense system. So in my mind, the time for delays and more studies and more objections is over. As I say it, the threat has voted and continues to visibly vote through the demonstration of capabilities. Last summer, I laid out 3 Missile Defense Agency priorities to help guide our actions, our behavior, and program planning. First, we will continue to focus on increasing system reliability to build warfighter confidence. Second, we will increase engagement capability and capacity. And third, we will address the advanced threat. I can tell you that the current ballistic missile defense system meets today's threat. However, as the threat increases in both number and lethality, we need to ensure that our systems will remain reliable, remain secure from cybersecurity threats, and that the nation's ballistic missile defense capability and capacity keep pace with that threat. We currently have 44 in-place ground-based interceptors for Homeland Defense and plan to expand the fleet to 64 by 2023. In addition, improvements in sensor coverage to include the long-range discriminating radar in Clear Alaska, the addition of a Homeland Defense radar in Hawaii if it's approved, and planning for a Homeland Defense radar in the Pacific, as well as advanced discrimination improvements, will enable the United States to improve protection of the homeland. The agency will also continue its redesigned kill vehicle development efforts, enhance the stockpile reliability program, and expand the ground-based interceptor battle space. Integrated space and terrestrial sensors for cueing, tracking, discrimination, and targeting ballistic missile threats are critical to improving missile defense architecture robustness. This budget will continue to fund the Space-Based Kill Assessment Demonstration Program to deliver a capability to confirm intercepts for improved defense of the homeland. We're also continuing concept definition studies for space-based missile defense tracking sensors. And if pursued, space sensors will be able to detect and track traditional and emerging threats as part of the BMDS architecture. We will continue to install the Aegis Ballistic Missile Defense Weapon System on Aegis ships and deliver Standard Missile 3 Block 1B interceptors. We're also supporting the European Phased Adaptive Approach, providing coverage and protection of NATO European territory populations and our deployed forces against the increasing ballistic missile threat from the Middle East. Our request will support continued integration of the SM-3 Block 2A missile, a co-development effort with Japan, into the Aegis Ballistic Missile Defense Weapon System, and the pre-production of all-up rounds to support the initial deployment for EPAA Phase 3. Currently, there is an operational Aegis Ashore site located in Romania, and while we have experienced delays in the military construction portion of the Aegis Ashore effort in Poland, we remain steadfastly committed to delivery of that capability in support of EPAA Phase 3. Finally, this budget request will continue the exploration of breakthrough technologies for integration into the BMDS, including discrimination improvements, multi-object kill vehicle technology, hypersonic defense technology, space-based interceptor technology, and exploring higher power lasers and interceptors that have potential use against threat missiles in the boost phase of flight. As we evaluate the elements of the missile defense system, we will actively pursue developing elements that have multi-mission and department-wide utility and leverage those systems. One such activity is with the F-35 that may have residual capability for missile defense. Mr. Chairman and members of the, Madam Chairman, apologize, and members of the subcommittee, I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, General. General Dickinson.
Chairman Fisher, Ranking Member Donnelly, and other distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for your continued support of our soldiers, civilians, and their families. I'm honored today to testify before you to emphasize the importance of air and missile defense to our nation, deployed forces, allies, and partners. Air and missile defense threats continue to increase both in quantity and in offensive capability. With this in mind, I appreciate your continued support for the nation's air and missile defense forces as we fulfill our role in securing the nation today and developing future forces and capabilities to counter tomorrow's threats. I'd like to briefly summarize the missions of the organizations I command. First, United States Army Space and Missile Defense Command, Army Forces Strategic Command, SMDC RSTRAT, serves as a force provider in support of our combatant commanders. Our 6 priorities are to protect our homeland, provide combat-ready forces and capabilities, plan and conduct synchronized global operations, prepare or adapt leap-ahead concepts and technologies, preserve and account for the nation's critical resources, and promote and foster a positive command climate. We provide not only air and missile defense forces, but also Army Space Forces. The Army has more than 4,000 military and civilian space cadre, providing continuous space-based capabilities and support to the warfighter around the world, from satellite communications to missile warning. SMDC RSTRAT's Future Warfare Center and Technical Center develop space and missile defense concepts, requirements, and doctrine. We provide training to the Army space cadre and missile defense operators and execute space and missile defense research and development. Within SMDC RSTRAT, we are collaborating closely with the Army's Air and Missile Defense cross-functional team. This effort is key to rapidly developing requirements and ensuring these future capabilities transition quickly from concept to prototyping to fielding. We are focusing on capabilities that include mobile, short-range air defense, and directed energy. I also have the honor and the privilege to command the Joint Functional Component Command for Integrated Missile Defense, or JFCC-IMD, which supports United States Strategic Command by integrating and synchronizing global missile defense operations. In support of U.S. STRATCOM, JFCC-IMD executes these 5 essential mission defense tasks: synchronizing operational level planning, supporting ongoing operations, integrating training exercises and test activities globally, providing recommendations on the allocation of low-density, high-demand missile defense resources, and also advocating for future capabilities. To accomplish this, we maintain close collaborative relationships with the geographic combatant commands, the Missile Defense Agency, the Office of the Secretary of Defense, the Joint Staff, and our allies and partners. Lastly, it's important to highlight that the challenges that we face cannot be overcome without the dedication of our most precious asset, our people. The service members, civilians, and contractors, along with their families stationed at home and globally deployed, provide support to the Army and joint warfighter each and every day. We are committed to providing trained and ready soldiers and civilians and developing effective space and missile defense capabilities to counter the threats of today and tomorrow. I appreciate the committee's continued support of missile defense operations, and especially your support of the men and women who deploy, develop, and operate these complicated systems. I've addressed in detail the full range of these missions and how we are executing them today in my written statement, which, as Madam, you said, will be submitted for the record. I look forward to addressing your questions. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. We'll begin our first round of questions. General Robinson and General Greaves, you both have talked about the defense capabilities that we have currently with the most pressing threat that we have, and that's North Korea. But in your opinion, does this budget keep us on a path to stay ahead of the threat that's posed by North Korea?
So, ma'am, I'll talk first, and then I'll let General Greaves, since he's the smart one. And here's what I worry about. As I've paid attention, so we appreciate the ATR that was given to us last fall. It allows us to build capacity. You and I have chatted a couple of times. The fact is, when we looked at what KJU was doing last May versus what happened through the summertime, this capacity and this redesigned kill vehicles will be very good for us in Alaska. But at the same time, we're not taking our eye off of having better discriminating radars. So I would tell you that where we are and what we're doing right now keeps us ahead of what's happening. We just can't keep our eye off the ball. And then I'll turn it over to General Greaves.
Chairman Fisher, the answer is yes. As I mentioned, the current ballistic missile defense system can meet today's threat. And what the FY17 ATR, the FY18 budget amendment, and this budget, what it does is increase our capability or our capacity, more rounds in the ground, whether it's ground-based interceptors or THAADs or Aegis SM-31Bs and ultimately the 2As. So I believe we are perfectly positioned to defend against today's threat. The other thing the budget does, it helps us keep our eye on the advancing threat as North Korea in particular and Iran, as they both increase their capability both in numbers and lethality. We must ensure that we look ahead at what capability will be required to stay apace of that threat. One such area we're working with is in the area of space sensors, or deploying the terrestrial architecture to space to supplement and augment what's on the ground. So keeping track of that capability is quite essential. Thank you.
And U.S. Forces Korea, you submitted that GEON request, and can you talk a little bit about the request and the importance of receiving funding this year? You outlined it a little bit, but what is the priority for it this year?
It's a very high priority. In fact, it was sensitized to me during my last visit to Korea with General Brooks. We spent over an hour, about 2 to 3 feet away, and he impressed upon me the importance of what's in that GEON. What it does, a couple of things. One, it allows us to disconnect the fiber tie between the THAAD control center and its launchers to increase the battle space by moving the launchers out. It allows the Patriot capability to essentially use the power of the THAAD radar to expand its battle space. And then it does what I believe is extremely important, integrates THAAD and Patriot to essentially optimize use of the interceptors so you minimize or eliminate wastage. So for General Brooks being right there on the front line, that was extremely important to him to ensure that we expand the battle space and optimize use of those precious assets.
And usually items on the UFR list are there because they were judged to be of lower priorities than the items that are included in the basic budget request. And as I understand it, however, this funding appears on the UFR list as a result of timing. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the items you see...
It's not a reflection of the priority then in this case?
Not in my mind.
It's all due to timing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And Secretary Rood, when do you expect to complete the MDR?
We're in the process of doing that work now as we speak, Senator, and we're looking in the near term here in the spring to finish that review. There are a number of, you've highlighted in your statement some of the challenges in the threat environment that we face, so we're eager to stay ahead of that threat, and we're looking at some competing approaches to do that, but I expect we'll have that shortly to you.
General Hyten noted some difficult policy questions in there, and we heard that boost phase term on an opening statement that's a big challenge. Is the department formulating any policies to fill that gap so that you can address those challenges that are associated with the boost phase intercept as part of the MDR?
Yes, we're looking at boost phase defense. There, as mentioned, this is a period of during the missile's flight when it is vulnerable to attack. It's a challenging period to be able to execute an effective missile defense during that period due to the geographic constraints and other things. But we are looking at a variety of ways to try to accomplish that goal.
Including lasers?
Yes.
Thank you. Senator Donnelly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to thank all of the witnesses again for being here. Under Secretary Rood, could you tell me how and why the review changed from the ballistic missile defense review to the missile defense review?
In terms of the rationale, Senator, the ballistic missile defense review is looking, of course, at ballistic missile defense of missiles that fly over a ballistic trajectory. The thought process was that there are other forms of missile attack, cruise missile attack, hypersonic glide vehicles, and the like that were of a similar nature in their challenge, and the integrated air and missile defense systems that the services are pursuing to provide defense for our troops in the field, our allies, and things of that nature, that it was important to see a connection there, and that was the rationale. Of course, it predated my arrival at the department to do that, but I support that decision because of the integrated security challenge that we face with those threats.
General Greaves, can you tell us how you contributed input into the Missile Defense Review?
Yes, sir. We have key members of our staff from the Engineering Directorate, from our Command and Control Battle Management Directorate, from other parts of the organization that have met frequently with other members within the department to help construct the MDR. So we've been actively involved.
General Robinson, could you please tell us how you helped contribute input into the Missile Defense Review process?
Absolutely. I think what's important as the warfighter and the one defending the United States, I've been able to contribute saying that I need to be able to detect, identify, track, and when necessary, engage to defend the United States. So whether it's ballistic missiles, whether it's cruise missiles, I've been able to give as the battle space owner my opinion and support my brothers here at the table.
General Dickinson, same question.
Yes, we've contributed in a large part to the effort in terms of JFCCIMD, or the role that I play as the integrated missile defense element for U.S. Strategic Command. So we've been participating throughout the process, and what we bring to the process is we bring the representation of all the combatant commands along with NORTHCOM in terms of providing that expertise and that perspective as we help to develop and shape the document.
General Greaves, I understand you're trying to accelerate the development and fielding of the redesigned kill vehicle to address the growing threat. And what I would like to know is, can you describe for us the ways you're mitigating the risk in the program and ensuring we have a capability that is fully tested before it is deployed?
Yes, sir. This development will be a gated, milestone-driven acquisition, as in specific decision points along the way where the department, not only the Missile Defense Agency, will assess readiness to proceed to the next phase. As an example, we completed the preliminary design review last May and used that as a decision point to convince anyone from the Cape, then the then AT&L, Ms. Lord, and others within the building that we were ready to proceed with obligating, I think it was $56 million worth of advanced procurement. So what we have done is we've taken great care and we have heeded the NDAA language that addresses fly before you buy, with the specific wording that talks about assessing our readiness to make these decisions through either adequately assessing through test or some other method before we make these production and deployment decisions. So we will make decisions after, as I mentioned, the preliminary design review. We have the critical design review coming up in December, where another subset of that funding will be assessed. And we've got a decision to make after the first controlled test vehicle test, which will now include not only a flyout of the interceptor, but a target where we will maneuver to the target, but then maneuver away after convincing ourselves that it would have engaged the target. And we will use that extra capability to assess how well the interceptor does in the combined or expanded battle space. So the bottom line story, sir, is a gated, milestone-driven, thoroughly reviewed assessment along the way.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Cotton.
Thank you all for appearing today for your testimony. General Greaves, let's talk a little bit more about boost phase intercept. I will reveal that I'm a major proponent of this technology at the outset. And the boost phase missiles are big and they're hot, so easy to detect, and most importantly, they're over the bad guys' territory, not over ours. But, you know, they don't come from just anywhere on Earth. There's a limited number of countries on Earth that have this capability and the intention to challenge us, and that boost phase intercept is at risk. Two obvious candidates are Russia and China. But is it fair to say that boost phase defenses are not really suitable against that threat because those countries are so large and they can position their missiles so far inland?
I would say, sir, yes. There is a geographical component of it. Boost phase intercept is, if not ideally, well suited to, say, the Korean Peninsula, very slim, where, as you say, they can't go far back.
Those are the magic words. So since Russia and China are not really susceptible to effective boost phase missile defense, where is it? North Korea. Maybe Iran as well, but North Korea is where it's really suitable. We talked about lasers earlier. I want to come back to those in a bit. What is the agency doing to explore the feasibility of airborne hit-to-kill defenses, specifically on UAVs? What kind of technology gap do we have today, given what we're already capable of doing with the UAV in air-to-ground attack, that might help neutralize or at least mitigate the North Korean threat?
We are doing technology development. That is the phase of acquisition that we're in, looking at both directed energy components as well as most likely taking advantage of air assets, which will already be in the theaters in support of other mission sets executing by the COCOM, to look at those assets as either sensors that can be fed into the command and control battle management system within our ballistic missile defense system, or as shooters. They could be platforms for a new breed of fast interceptor weapons that, if placed appropriately or closely or in the right position, would be effective boost phase intercept capability.
Yeah. So big fan of manned aircraft as well, but manned aircraft have men and women in them, so they have limitations, right? They have to land, they have to eat, they have to sleep, so on and so forth. UAVs do not. How high a priority is it for the agency to explore the possibility that we could put an effective airborne net over the Korean Peninsula with UAVs, both sensor platforms and armed platforms, in international waters that could potentially prevent North Korean missiles from ever getting off of the launching pad?
It is a high priority within the Missile Defense Agency, and the phase that we're in now is the technology piece of it. For instance, directed energy. Can we
get to directed energy in just a moment? So what is the gap, given what we can do with the UAV and air-to-ground attack right now, what is the gap of taking that kind of demonstrated and deployed technology and deploying it in that kind of system against North Korea, and rather than aiming it at a terrorist's home or car, aiming it at a North Korean missile on the launch pad?
The full answer will have to be coordinated with the combatant commander, but the gap or limitation is numbers and altitude and duration for the platforms of interest. And we have been doing some preliminary work on that over the past few years. And again, we're not talking directed energy, but doing things such as beam pointing, stability, duration, and pseudo CONOPS development on it. But the actual placement above, around, in vicinity of the targets, that's a COCOM decision.
Okay, I just think it's an extremely high priority, and most people probably underestimate how close we are to that kind of solution. I know that's not the long-term solution. That's why I want to put directed energy or lasers to the end of the conversation. That's a little bit longer, and that's ultimately the right solution, I think. Right. Once lasers get shrunken down so the power source can actually fit on the aircraft like that, and I strongly support that as well. But I think that we have a real opportunity in the very short term, not a matter of months, but not a matter of decades either, to, if not neutralize the North Korean threat with airborne boost phase systems, at least severely mitigate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to follow up on Senator Cotton's questioning, General Greaves, is the technology available right now to do that?
So I'd say portions of the technology are available. For instance, the current suite of kinetic weapons that we have that could potentially fulfill that role. They may not have the distance, the legs as we call it, to execute, even if we had the UAV technology flying and ready to go. The concept of operations, or the ops concept, is extremely important with respect to how many caps you're flying, where those caps are located, the resources tail that goes behind it. But those are not my areas of responsibility. That's the COCOM. But the technology is getting closer.
Okay, good. That's good to know. General Robinson, thank you. I missed your opening statement, but I understand you had an announcement, which we're kind of shocked and, wow, you've been a historic figure. I want to thank you for your service. First female combatant commander in the history of the United States. Thanks for coming up to Alaska so much. We appreciate that. Recently at the event that we both were at, it was a great evening, so thank you. Thank you for your wonderful service. I wanted to talk a little bit, I mentioned to a number of you, General Greaves, as well. We make good progress in the last year, I think, with regard to a missile defense bill from this committee, passes in the NDA, fully funded in December. And I was out on a CODEL led by the current chairman, acting chairman of the Armed Services, Senator Inhofe. We were in Alaska. We went out to Fort Greely. Part of the funding and the new authorization is for a new field out there. A lot of excitement. We're on the ground looking at it. And then we hear 5 to 6 years, 5 to 6 years before we get this field operational. Now, we won World War II in a shorter amount of time. I can go through a whole list, and the chair is very focused on these issues, not just in the military, but even building roads, whatever. Why on earth should this take 5 to 6 years, and what do you need? I've already talked to a number of you. Legislatively, because I'm sure it would be bipartisan, to say, hey, we're doing all this. The threat is here. The threat is here right now. We need more capacity. A new field at Fort Greely is more capacity. What can we do to help you make this so it's not 5 to 6 years, a half a decade, to get a new field operational? We should try and get that done in a year and a half, in a year. So, General Greaves, I know I just pitched this to you just the other day, but we want to get this in the NDAA to help you, to help America defend itself when there's enormous bipartisan support to do it. 5 to 6 years to me is lunacy. What can we do? And I'll throw this out to any of the witnesses.
Sir, if I could start. One update to our conversation yesterday. The environmental impact statement for Fort Greely was done for the 100 interceptor base when the field was first developed. So what we have to do for the additional 20 is an environmental assessment, and that work's just about done.
Okay,
so
good.
That's off the table. The construction of the missile field itself is an approximately 36-month effort, and the limitations involved.
Built the Alcan Highway in 11 months.
Yes, sir.
I mean, there's a long list of things in America we used to build quickly. Even 3 years is pretty darn long, right?
Yes, sir. And those 3 years are paced by the standard building time frame up in Alaska, April through October. Now, there are things that could be done.
Build year-round in Alaska on occasion.
Yes, sir. I was about to say that there are things that can be done to essentially reduce that time. But the pacing item for the additional 20 GBIs in the ground are the GBIs themselves, and the fact that they are being procured as all-up rounds with the redesigned kill vehicle on top. And the approach, unlike what was done for the initial deployment of the initial interceptors, where we essentially have done exactly what you're asking, we are taking a series of steps to ensure that what we are designing, building, testing, and delivering are more reliable, more maintainable, and for the long term, more sustainable. So, and the acquisition of that under the current set of guidelines, we talked about that a little earlier, is a gated and milestone-driven decision process. So there are a number of folks, other entities within the department that are involved, all the way from the operational testers to the folks in CAPE to the folks in now A&S, Acquisition and Sustainment, that have to be involved and ensure that we are minimizing risk for this deployment. Now, if it was stated that there is some national security waiver to get them into the ground now and to provide the Missile Defense Agency and others with complete authority to do things, then we can, of course, move out faster at a higher level of risk. But we learned some significant lessons from the deployment of the initial set of GBIs, where we had to go back and complete the systems engineering for those rounds, and it's taken us quite a bit of time to do it, and we've now completed that. So the intent here is to keeping the threat in mind, we've already accelerated the planned deployment of those GBIs by at least a year to 2023, beginning in 2021, going out to 2023. But to accelerate it further brings increased risk. We feel very confident we can deliver it per the timeline that we've got.
Well, we want to work with you on
sir.
accelerating, all of you, on accelerating that.
Thank you, Senator Sullivan. Secretary Root, if I could continue with another issue on the missile defense enterprise. We know it's struggled with the increasing portion of the MDA's budget that's going to procurement and taking money away from what really is the MDA's chief purpose, and that's research and development. And why we all support the significant increase in the MDA's top line that's included in this year's budget, I think it actually exacerbates this issue. MDA's budget grew by almost $2 billion compared to the projections in last year's budget, and about 45% of that increase went to procurement. So do you expect the MDR to look into this issue?
One of the things that is a challenge facing us in the department is the Missile Defense Agency's role, as you say, as a research, development, testing, and evaluation organization. They've also played a substantial role in operations and sustainment of systems once we have them in the field. And one of the organizational issues that we need to work through is the transition. At what point and how do we transition those capabilities to the services to manage? That's been something the department has struggled with for quite some time. For the past decade and a half about that's been a discussion item. And so that is one of the things in the Missile Defense Review that we are looking at, because we want to make sure that we get the balance correct where MDA's work on near-term production, that is to say current systems, and the balance about new system development, advanced capabilities. There's always a balance about how much do you invest today and how much in future technology. And getting that balance correct is one of the things we're looking at.
I hope you are able to do that. And Secretary, for all of Russia's talk about how the U.S. missile defenses jeopardize strategic stability and justifies their violation of arms control treaties or pursuit of new nuclear weapons, President Putin's speech was the latest example of that. Isn't it true that Moscow deploys a highly capable ballistic missile defense system?
They do. The Russians have maintained, and indeed at the times when their budgets were most stressed, they continued to modernize the Moscow anti-ballistic missile defense system. I can say from the time when I previously served in government in the 2001 to 2008 period, having routine discussions with the Russians about that, and they're very blunt about the fact that that's a high priority for them to defend their capital and their people, where the majority of their population lives, against ballistic missile attack. Their basic argument is that they don't wish the United States to do that. And so I don't accept that argument. And I would note it's a new argument from President Putin. In 2001, when the United States announced its withdrawal from the ABM treaty, President Putin gave a national address in which he stated this posed no threat to Russia's national security. And shortly thereafter, he agreed to the conclusion of the Moscow Treaty, which at that time and to date is the largest reduction in strategic nuclear forces that our two countries have done. So I read very carefully his recent statement, and we weren't surprised by what was announced, certainly disappointed by the tone in that statement, but it's a new discussion item. It's a new characterization, I think, of what has led to those capabilities that we're seeing from President Putin.
Do you have any thoughts that you can share with us on why you think President Putin is making this new case?
I think there is twofold. One, the context of that speech, the vast majority of it dealt with domestic issues. It was a bit of a State of the Union speech would be too routinized, or wouldn't be exactly the right description of it, but it covered a whole range of topics, mostly focused on domestic issues. The tail end did focus on defense capabilities and those particular capabilities.
Was it a political speech, do you believe, then?
Yes, but it was more than that. It certainly was messaging to the rest of the world and the United States, so we should see it for both. And it was noteworthy that President Putin showed animation of a missile strike on the United States. There's only one other country that has done that, in North Korea. It was also noteworthy that it's not the only time or effort where the Russians have signaled things to us in the United States. So I think while it was a political speech, it was also a message to the United States and the rest of the world about how they see us and that security environment and the capabilities that Russia is pursuing.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Senator Dunn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. General Dickinson, DOTE continues to find that Army's training of its soldiers to conduct testing of THAAD and Patriot is insufficient. In the FY17 report, DOTE found that flight testing in FY17 demonstrated that THAAD training and documentation deficiencies worsened in FY17, and Patriot training remained inadequate to prepare operators for complex Patriot engagements. In your role as Commander of Army Space and Missile Defense Command, you have the responsibility to organize, train, and equip Army Space and Global Ballistic Missile Defense Forces. Do these insufficiencies concern you, and what are we doing to improve the training?
This is a Fox 10 News Alert.
Happy Friday afternoon, everybody. You are taking a live look at a building fire in Ayer, Massachusetts. That's A-Y-E-R, Massachusetts. We're going to get you some more information on exactly what type of building this is, but looks like they've been trying to spray it for a while now, and that's what's there on the ground on the left-hand side. We're going to continue to monitor this situation. Don't believe there's any audio from their version of Skyfox, but let's take a listen. No audio from their chopper, but we'll continue to monitor it. You see firefighters there getting on the roof of that building. You're watching News Now, part of Fox10Phoenix.com. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Fox News Now, part of Fox10Phoenix.com. My name is Pilar Arias. You are taking a live look at aerials out of Ayer, Massachusetts. Being told this is some sort of building fire there, and you see crews trying to get on the roof of that building to extinguish it. We're going to get you some more information here in regards to what type of building this is and if anybody's injured or in danger of being so. So we're going to continue to monitor it here. No audio coming from their chopper, but you're watching News Now, again, a part of Fox10Phoenix.com. Hopefully everyone's having a great Friday afternoon. Wow, so it looks like a couple different parts of this building, if the whole thing is not already involved in this fire. See different sides there of the building. Side closest to us and furthest away from us there. Lots of thick black smoke there rising from the building as well. Lots of snow left on the ground there in Ayer, Massachusetts. Just to give you all an update here, the Ayer Police Department 22 minutes ago putting out on Facebook, Fitchburg Road Route 2A closed to all traffic between Groton School Road and Groton Shirley Road. Fire departments from region assisting Ayer Fire Department battling industrial fire. Seek alternate routes. Getting reports here that an explosion may be involved in this fire here, and also that one person who was at the building has been taken to the hospital. Again, we're hearing explosion and fire there in Ayer, Massachusetts. One person taken to the hospital. No additional details immediately available, but we're working to get you some more. When I look for the closest news station, it appears that Fox Boston is the closest station, or the closest news market there. So we'll continue to monitor the situation. So Ayer, Massachusetts is about 47 miles. It depends on which route you take. Looks like the fastest route is actually about 37. So 37 to 47 miles, depending on which route you take, northwest from Boston, Massachusetts. You're watching Fox News Now, part of fox10phoenix.com. If you're just joining us here this afternoon on Fox News Now, part of fox10phoenix.com, welcome. My name is Pilar Arias. You are currently taking a live look at a building fire in Ayer, Massachusetts, which, depending on the route that you take from Boston, it's about 37 to 47 miles northwest of Boston. Some updates that we're getting, we're being told that an explosion was reported through the roof of the building there. And so it looks like the building is burning at two complete opposite ends there. But again, the Massachusetts Fire Marshal just confirming, just into the News Now newsroom, an explosion and one person airlifted to a local hospital. So again, an explosion and one person airlifted to a hospital. That information coming from the Massachusetts Fire Marshal. No audio, though, coming from their version of Sky Fox. But you are watching News Now, part of fox10phoenix.com. We actually have a News Now viewer currently on the YouTube stream who says it's in their neighborhood about a few miles away, and it looks like this could be a Pepsi-Cola bottling plant, this actual commercial building here. So again, this is from somebody who says they live out in the area. No audio from their chopper. We're continuing to look for updates for you here on News Now, part of fox10phoenix.com. But thanks so much for all the viewer tips and insights. We really appreciate it. All right, everybody, it looks like Sky Fox is leaving the scene there. You've been watching News Now, part of fox10phoenix.com. Thanks for being with us, and happy Friday. Hey, you watching the stream. Thanks for being with us. I would like to see some emoji hands up if you witnessed President Trump's remarks this morning in regards to the $1.3 trillion spending bill that he signed, despite tweeting this morning that he might veto it. Let me know if you watched it. Because if you didn't, that's okay. I'm about to replay it for you.
Thank you very much, everybody. We have a lot of good news to report. Some tremendous trade deals are being made with various countries. We're negotiating very long, very hard, but very quickly. And the deal with South Korea is, according to Secretary Ross and Bob Lighthizer, is very close to being finished. And we're going to have a wonderful deal with a wonderful ally. We're getting very close to it. It was a deal that was causing a lot of problems for our country in terms of employment and in terms of lots of other things. I might ask Secretary Ross to just say a few words about that, and then we're going to get on to this ridiculous situation that took place over the last week. So, Secretary Ross.
Thank you, Mr. President. We believe we are relatively close to a pretty comprehensive resolution with the South Korean government. It will encompass, if it goes through, both the 232s and broader trade issues. And we hope by sometime next week to be able to have a real announcement.
Thank you very much, Wilbur. I appreciate it. The last time we negotiated something like this, and as you know, it's always been a problem for our country, they get together and they create a series of documents that nobody's been able to read because it was just done. Now, you tell me who can read that quickly. It takes a long time to read it. For the last 8 years, deep defense cuts have undermined our national security. Howled our, and they just, if you look at what's taken out, they've hallowed our readiness as a military unit and put America at really grave risk. My highest duty is to keep America safe. Nothing more important. The omnibus bill reverses this dangerous defense. As crazy as it's been, as difficult as it's been, as much opposition to the military as we've had from the Democrats, and it has been tremendous. I try to explain to them, you know, the military is for Republicans and Democrats and everybody else. It's for everybody. But we have tremendous opposition to creating really what will be by far the strongest military that we've ever had. We've had that from the Democrats. So if we take something for the military, they want something for, in many cases, things that are really a wasted sum of money. And it's not right, and it's very bad for our country. We're looking to do funding for our final fight in certain areas. As you know, we've gotten just about 100% of our land back from ISIS. We have troop increases necessary to accomplish what we have to do, and we have, very importantly, a pay increase for our troops. And this will be actually the largest pay increase for our incredible people in over a decade. It increases total defense spending by more than $60 billion from last year and funds the addition of critically needed ships, planes, helicopters, tanks, and submarines. We have submarines being built, the likes of which there's nothing anywhere in the world like the submarines we build. Our military equipment is the best equipment in the world. And one of the things you saw 2 days ago with Saudi Arabia and with other countries, Saudi Arabia, as an example, is buying hundreds of billions of dollars worth of our equipment. And we're getting very fast approvals on that. Therefore, as a matter of national security, I've signed this omnibus budget bill. There are a lot of things that I'm unhappy about in this bill. There are a lot of things that we shouldn't have had in this bill, but we were, in a sense, forced, if we want to build our military, we were forced to have. There are some things that we should have in the bill. But I say to Congress, I will never sign another bill like this again. I'm not going to do it again. Nobody read it. It's only hours old. Some people don't even know what it is. $1.3 trillion. It's the second largest ever. President Obama signed one that was actually larger, which I'm sure he wasn't too happy with either. But in this case, it became so big because we need to take care of our military. And because the Democrats, who don't believe in that, added things that they wanted in order to get their votes. We have to get rid of the filibuster rule. We have to get rid of the filibuster rule and go to 51 votes in the Senate if we're going to have really sustained, continued success. DACA recipients have been treated extremely badly by the Democrats. We wanted to include DACA. We wanted to have them in this bill, 800,000 people, and actually it could even be more. And we wanted to include DACA in this bill. The Democrats would not do it. They would not do it. To prevent the omnibus situation from ever happening again, I'm calling on Congress to give me a line item veto for all government spending bills, and the Senate must end. They must end the filibuster rule and get down to work. We have to get a lot of great legislation approved, and without the filibuster rule, it'll happen just like magic. I want to address the situation on border security, which I call national defense. I call it stopping drugs from pouring across our border, and I call it illegal immigration.
This is a Fox 10 News Alert.
All right, everybody, we are watching this live out of the Houston, Texas area, being told that Sky Fox is heading to a chase scene there. Again, this is a police pursuit, we're being told, is in Houston, Texas. So Sky Fox just launching there, headed to the scene, but we don't want you to miss a thing here on Fox News Now, part of fox10phoenix.com. So let's fly along with a helicopter here, their version of Sky Fox out there in Texas, and let's see what they see, huh? Let's watch it all together. Do us a favor, please, and click share so all your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, everybody in between can watch this all together and comment on it, because it is Friday, right? If you're just joining us here at News Now, part of fox10phoenix.com, you're watching KRIV Sky Fox out of Houston, Texas, headed to a police chase. So we're riding alongside with him there. You're getting kind of a behind-the-scenes look of how the chopper looks, and looks like a nice day out there in Houston. It is almost 3:45 p.m. here in the Phoenix area. So let's ride along and see what they find. All right, well, the chase is over. So Sky Fox tried to launch very quickly there, get us to the scene, but you never know with breaking news situations how quickly they'll change or develop here. It looks like the FBI is holding a news conference in California in regards to somebody who got onto a military base at a car explosion. Let's head there.
Greater Solano County community that's associated with this. If we do determine through the course of our investigation that there are additional either individuals or additional threats, we'll obviously get that out as soon as possible for the public's awareness. But as of right now, I want the public to rest assured that we have no information whatsoever that any of those types of threats exist. So again, this is ongoing investigation. We will keep you informed about it as things progress. I know you have questions, but that's kind of the status of where we're at the current time. So let me open it up for some questions.
Have you identified any of Cosby's friends or relatives in
Yep. So that's part of the ongoing investigation. We're trying to identify associates, friends. We have identified some associates, I would say, and we're doing interviews. So that's part of the our ongoing efforts. We've done some interviews. We're obviously doing things like social media scrubs. We're going to try to look at the phones that were inside the vehicle at the time. Email type accounts, things like that, to try to understand what his frame of mind was and what led up to this. So yes, we have identified a few people that we've spoken to. Family, we have not identified any family here in the United States. We do believe that there's family in India. One person in India that we've identified and spoken to. And that's kind of where we're at right now, but we are looking for additional associates, additional friends, if any.
Just a quick follow-up, was he employed?
The information I have is that in the past he had worked as a cab driver. I don't know if he was currently working as a cab driver or not, but that's the information that I have right now. But those are also things that are being investigated as to what was his employment, where did he work.
Sorry.
Yep.
Don Thompson, Associated Press. There's been talk that he was sort of a nomad, a vagabond. Did he have that kind of a base or a home or anything like that, or what can you tell us there?
Yeah, so we are trying to determine kind of where his most current residence was. We do have some leads with regards to that, and we are following up on that currently. It does appear that there's different residences and so different areas associated with him in terms of where he's gone, mostly in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we're working on that now in terms of trying to define those.
Have you executed any search warrants of any of his past residences or his current ones or anything?
So we're working on some search warrants currently, and again, we have done some discussions and interviewed some folks, and we are working on some search warrants currently, though.
You said you're examining his phone. Have you already gotten into his phone to see if he's called anyone or gotten any information from any of the phones that you found?
We're still in the process of doing that, so yeah, that's ongoing.
There was talk there was some sort of video that was recovered from the phone. Can you address that?
Yeah, sure. As of right now, I know that was out there. We have no videos that we found in terms of any I think there was some information out there that might be some jihadi type videos, things like that. And no, we've not found anything in that regard. I think there's one video that they were able to see on the phone and had nothing of substance really.
No manifestos, anything like that?
No, we didn't find any at the scene. That is part, obviously, of the ongoing investigation to try to determine was there anything left, either in writing or email or social media posts, things like that. That will be something that we're looking at.
If we can go back for a minute to the scene itself, any shots fired as he came through, or was it at that point thought to be like an accident of some sort, or what was the scene?
Yeah, no shots fired. I believe, and I could defer to my partnership, but I believe the thought originally was probably some sort of an accident as it was coming up to the front gate. So.
And if I can follow up again, I'm sorry. So it's propane that's in there. Obviously, that's a danger at that point to the first responders. Did they pretty much put it out before they realized, hey, this thing's a moving bomb kind of thing, or was it something like where they were trying to prevent it from blowing up at that stage?
So the vehicle, if I have the timeline right, the vehicle crashed before any of the first responders got to it. And so it was already stopped, and then they responded, and then there was the flames, and I believe the doors were secured, and so at that point, they did make the efforts to put the flames out and to...
All right, everyone. Prior to thinking that we had a breaking police chase out of Houston, we were listening to President Trump making his remarks about signing the $1.3 trillion budget or spending bill. So let's head back there now because we only have about 10 minutes left here on News Now, part of Fox10Phoenix.com. Pilar Arias here signing off for now. See y'all Monday. Everybody have a great weekend.
General. The border, we've worked very hard on. We have a lot of really by any standard a lot, but not by this standard, but we're going to make it go a long way. We have a lot of money coming to the border, and it will be coming over a period of time. We funded the initial down payment of $1.6 billion. We're going to be starting work literally on Monday on not only some new wall, not enough, but we're working on that very quickly, but also fixing existing walls and existing acceptable fences. There are some areas that you have to see through. You have to be able to see through the other side in order to see what's coming. And in many cases, it's not a pretty picture when you look, but you have to be able to see it. So we have $1.6 billion for the wall. That'll start immediately. This is a short-term funding, but it's immediate, starts immediately. And I'd like to ask Secretary Nielsen to say a few words about what we've done in terms of Homeland Security and what the bill does for Homeland Security. Thank you.
Good afternoon. We at the Department of Homeland Security work very closely with the Department of Defense, and we support this omnibus in the defense of our country. As the President has stated, under his leadership, he has delivered for the American people. This is a down payment on a border wall system. This is a 10% increase for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. This will help us improve our aviation security with some badly needed upgrades, and we look forward to working with Congress on additional needs that we have. I will say, however, that it's unfortunate that Congress chose not to listen to the men and women of DHS and those on the front lines. They told us how to build the wall, where to build the wall, and we will continue to work with them to make sure that the wall is where we need it, how we need it, as the President described, and to make sure that it serves the American people and serves the security of this nation. We also will continue to work with Congress to close the dangerous loopholes that the President has mentioned many times, and to continue to increase our overall security. And finally, we thank those in Congress who support the Department of Homeland Security. I will continue to make myself available to them. I look forward to working with them, but we must fund the department and give it the tools and resources it needs to execute the mission the American people have asked us to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary. So we have many elements in the bill that we wanted. Just to look at a few of them, we're providing $654.6 billion in total discretionary funding for defense. It's a record, all records for defense. There will be nobody that says that our military is going to be depleted like they've been saying over the last long period of time, frankly, beyond President Obama. That won't be happening. We're spending a lot of money on nuclear, our nuclear systems, to upgrade, and in some cases brand new, whether it's submarines, nuclear submarines, and others. So we'll have by far the most powerful nuclear force on Earth, and it'll be absolutely in perfect shape and condition, and hopefully, praise be to God, we don't ever have to use it. But there will be nobody that's even close. This will give a substantial increase to people even outside of the military, but military-related. Some of the many things that we're buying in the military, we have $23.8 billion to procure 34 Navy ships. Our Navy is at about the lowest point in terms of ships that it's been in over 100 years. And we're adding a significant number of extremely advanced vessels. $10.2 billion for 90 F-35 aircraft. That's the most sophisticated aircraft in the world, jet fighters, total stealth. They're hard to find, they're hard to see, therefore they're hard to beat. It's very tough to beat a plane when you can't see it. It's the most advanced in the world. $10.2 billion for 90 F-35. We have $2.9 billion for 15 KC-46 tanker aircraft. The tanker aircraft is very important based on everything. It allows our planes to travel anywhere in the world without landing. $1.8 billion for 24 FA-18EF Super Hornet aircraft fighter jets. $1.7 billion for 10 PA, the Poseidons. Incredible stuff. $1.1 billion for 56 UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters, most advanced helicopter in the world by far, fighting machine. $1.1 billion for the upgrade of 85 Abrams tanks. $705 million for the cooperative programs that we're working with Israel and others on various missile defense systems. We're spending a lot of money on missile defense. We have a lot of offense that's been recently installed. We're spending tremendous money on missile defense. You understand what that means? Everybody does. With what we have out there, missile defense is very, very important. We are funding our Border Patrol agents and our ICE agents. They are working long hours under tremendously dangerous conditions. We're adding.
Final goodbye here, everyone. Have a great night. Have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday.
Level and the federal level of Court of Appeals, but we're adding immigration judges at a very high level. So while we're very disappointed in the $1.3 trillion, nobody more disappointed than me because the number is so large, it'll start coming down. We had no choice but to fund our military because we have to have by far the strongest military in the world. And this will be by far the strongest military that we've ever had. So when you look at all of these pages, a lot of that is devoted, a lot, to the military. I just want to thank members of Congress for working so hard. While we can be disappointed in some ways, we have to also know that there are a lot of strings pulling everybody in different directions. The Republican senators, the